If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description. Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200 plus audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.
Chapter 21, 4th Floor, 3. You have an offer I can't refuse. Lumen asked with a laugh. The laws of the tower are quite simple. The strong rule over the weak, and stronger rule over the strong. Lumen could understand a high ranker or a ranker telling him that, but a regular? He found that quite funny. The purple-haired man, as if not sensing the ridicule in Lumen's voice, continued on. Yes. I'm here to extend you an invitation to join FUG. FUG. Lumen though. Diana had told him about this organization. FUG's members have a grudge against 10 families in Zahard, envy what they possess and want to change the tower in some way. She also told him that should they learn that Lumen is an irregular, they would surely try to recruit him. As an irregular, he is one of the few that could actually kill King Zahard. What do they want with me? Have they found out that I'm an irregular? Lumen would have normally killed them already but decided to wait and see what they want, before doing so. FUG has a lot of agents spread across the tower, be they regulars or rankers. You could find them on any floor. You see, the person you killed on the 3rd floor was part of FUG. Tench was supposed to advance to this floor and take my position, while I climb higher. Since you killed him, I will give that honor to you. Join FUG, take my spot on the 4th floor while I will take your spot on your team. Those regulars are important for FUG, so we have to keep an eye on them. Replacing you is the perfect opportunity, should you refuse, I will personally kill you. The purple-haired man stared menacingly at Lumen after he finished his speech. Why are my teammates important to FUG? Lumen was confused. He thought they are here because of him, not because of his teammates. So if they are here because of them, what makes them so important then? That's something that you do not need to know. Now choose. The purple-haired man raised his voice, trying to intimidate him. Lumen let out a sigh and shook his head. Have you not made your homework about me? The moment he finished his question, he was already standing in front of one cloaked regulars with his hand clutching the other person's throat. I don't like it when people give me the wrong answer. Lumen stated and snapped the cloaked figure's neck. Before they could realize what's happening, he appeared next to the other cloaked person. Turning only his leg into light, he kicked the man's head away, like a football player shooting a penalty. The purple-haired man was sweating buckets seeing all of that. When they said he is strong, they should have said that he is do not approach level strong. Now, my dear friend. Why don't we try again with you giving me the right answers this time? Lumen told him with a smile, that to the purple-haired man looked like the devil's smile. The FUG member hesitated for a second, before making his decision. Forming 2 bongs, he applied his quality and turned them into purple string-like objects. He might die trying, but he will at least attempt to take down the one they call White Star. The 2 strings came from both sides and tried entangling Lumen. He was surprised seeing someone being able to apply quality to his Shinsu. The only other person that he has seen doing it was Diana. Her main and preferred quality is a jasmine flower. Although not an attacking type of quality, it's extremely versatile. It could defend with its petals, capture an enemy by entangling it, force someone to sleep, or even entrance them with its aroma. The lack of attacking methods are covered up by the massive amount of Shinsu she could control, or her other 3 qualities. So far, this is the second person that Lumen has seen applying quality to their Shinsu. He dodged one of the purple strings and grabbed the other with his hand. The string was grinding at his palm and was slowly peeling his flesh away. It's like a little saw. Nothing special other than that. The FUG member was staring at him wide-eyed. He actually caught that without his hand falling off. No regular has managed to survive being hit with one of his purple strings, but Lumen was even able to catch it. He was cursing himself 10 times over. Why did he come up to this guy with so much confidence? At least, he had managed to send a message to his superiors. They would know that he has died by his hands. Lumen healed his palm and used his light abilities to reach the purple-haired member. He kicked him in the knee and blew his leg away. Repeating the same action on the other side, he left the man legless. Now, let's play a game. Either you talk, or you die. Let's see which happens first. Lumen crouched down next to him with a smile. The Plane team had already gathered together, and with Verdi's help, captured the Golden Bull as well. Having an anima as a teammate sure is convenient. Now, we only need to bring it back to the mountain area. Hopefully, Lumen has taken care of things there. Lisa told the group. He is stronger than all of us, so he should have no problem with that, Tiana replied to him. She has been with him the longest from the current group and had full confidence in him. Yeah, I know, but he is still only one man, Lisa said. But that one man could kill our whole group on his own, Hatsu commented from the side. You should have more confidence in someone that beat me, a princess of Zahard. Andrasi complimented him in her own way. Lisa let out a sigh. Yeah, you guys are right. Sometimes I forget how strong he actually is. Like, when you think of irregulars, you wouldn't think of someone like Bam, but someone like Lumen. Again, the group started their debate whether he is an irregular or not for the nth time. Most of the time, it ended with the conclusion that it shouldn't be possible for two irregulars to enter at the same time. There has been a total of 4 irregulars in the tower counting Bam. And that's for thousands of years. How unlikely is it for 2 to enter the tower at the same time? Why does it matter if he is an irregular? Verdi questioned. She didn't care if he is or not. That froze the group for a moment. They always asked if he is an irregular or not. They never thought if that actually matters. It doesn't really matter, does it? Lisa asked with a laugh. Let's stop wasting time, he will probably get annoyed at us if he finds out, Anik told them. He won't get angry at us if he doesn't find out. Lisa sneakily suggested with a goofy smile. I will tell him. Verdi and Anik said at the same time. Hearing them, Lisa's smile disappeared just as fast as it appeared. Let's go, guys. Lumen is waiting for us. We can't disappoint him, can we? Lisa tried to usher the group to move faster. The group started moving towards the mountain area. They were quite a distance away, so it will take them at least a few hours to reach it. Thankfully, they don't have to actually carry the golden bowl, since Verdi had stored it in her bowl. The perks of having an anima on your team. During the time that they were moving towards the mountain, they got attacked on a few occasions. Nothing that managed to prove to be a challenge, considering they have all trained with Lumen for over 2 weeks. Count in the fact that they have 2 princesses of Zahard, and there shouldn't be a stronger team than them. 4 hours later, they finally reached the base of the mountain. There was a weird barrier made of shinsu blocking their way, but since they had the golden bowl with them, they easily passed through it. They had contacted Lumen to come to the barrier, but he just told them to go straight to the castle. Trusting him, they started moving in that direction. A few minutes later, a giant saber-toothed tiger jumped in front of them. Seeing the beast, they all got ready to attack. There was a rule stating that they couldn't attack other teams, not other beats. Just as they were about to attack, Verdi ran up to it. Hello, Saber. She jumped on top of her and started petting the tiger. Did Lumen send you? Verdi questioned Saber, which roared in response. Wait. That beast is Lumen's? Why haven't we seen it before? Everyone was surprised learning that he has a saber-toothed tiger and that he is an anima as well. Uncle Dan gave it to him. He was so surprised at how talented Lumen is as an anima, that he tried using Saber as dowry to try and force him to marry into the Lopo Bia family. Verdi explained to the group while petting Saber. The tiger had started purring like a little cat. Wait, wait, wait. Lumen is getting married into the Lopo Bia family. Again, everyone exclaimed in surprise. They knew Lumen kept a lot of secrets from them, but marrying into one of the 10 great families is a big thing in the tower. Of course not. He refused him. Verdi answered them with a straight face, her hand not stopping even for a second as she continued petting Saber, who looked to be melting at this point. Why would he refuse? Isn't that a great opportunity? Andrasi asked. I think he said that he values his freedom. Uncle was so surprised by his answer that he decided to let him keep Saber. Verdi's answer hit Andrasi the hardest. She knew what it means to sacrifice her freedom. After all, she had to give up so much, in order to become a princess of Zahard. Let's go to Lumen. Saber will lead us there. Verdi exclaimed and they started climbing the mountain. On the way to the castle, they noticed how silent the forest is. Not even a single scuffle between regulars could be heard. For that matter, not even a single regular could be seen. They half expected for a team of regulars to be waiting for them at the base of the mountain, but they hadn't seen even a single regular so far. The realization hit them, as they understood that Lumen has already taken care of all the regular in the mountain area. They finally reached the castle walls, when they saw Lumen sitting in front of the castle walls. Just as they were about to greet him, they noticed his serious look. He was staring at all of them and evaluating them one by one. "I'm happy that you got the bull, but before we could finish the test, we are going to have a nice and long talk between ourselves," Lumen told them with a serious tone. After he tortured and interrogated the purple-haired man, he came to the conclusion that his team members are very important to Fug. Not one, not two, but the majority of them are important to Fug. That was a point of concern because he didn't know why. No matter how he asked, the purple-haired man was adamant about not telling him anything. But at the very least he knew that they are unaware of him being an irregular. Otherwise, they would have come for him, not for them. So now the question is, how do almost all of his teammates have a connection to Fug? And what makes them so important to that organization? Lisa was scared out of his pants, seeing his look. He gulped down and asked him, "What are we going to talk about?" "We are going to talk about why more than half of my teammates have a connection with Fug." Lumen was expecting to see some reactions here, but absolutely everyone looked confused at his statement. Not a single one of them looked surprised, they were all puzzled at why he thinks they have a connection to Fug. Either way, they sat down and after a couple-hour-long discussion, they finished the test, by bringing the golden bull back to its shed. Chapter 22, 4th Floor, 4. Despite the couple-hour-long discussion, Lumen couldn't understand why a majority of his teammates are important to Fug. The group all met each other when they had to take the position test on the 2nd floor. They hadn't known each other before that, and that's the only thing they had in common. They normally didn't like talking about the events on that floor, but Lumen forced them to spill the beans. From that, he understood that after he left, they had to go through a complicated situation, to say the least. Bam had revealed himself as an irregular and requested a test from the guardian of the floor. Someone tried assassinating the two princesses, Yuri had intervened, saved them, and then taken both Green April and Black March, 2 of the 13-month series, from Anak. Bam had died at the end of the test, and that led to every other regular to pass on to the next floor, thanks to a deal he made with the guardian. It's definitely weird that an irregular had died at the lowest floor, but not entirely impossible. Diana had told him that he is the weakest irregular she had seen, but Bam looked even weaker than him. Despite that, he was still an irregular. So he shouldn't have died that easily. That still didn't answer why his teammates are so important to Fug. He could understand if Bam was alive, and they were somehow threatening him with them, but he died. The guardian of the floor had confirmed that otherwise, why would he allow everyone to advance to the next floor? Unless Fug had somehow managed to fool the guardian. But that shouldn't be possible since guardians are supposed to be omnipresent on their floor. Had Fug somehow managed to strike a deal with the guardian then? But what could they possibly offer to the guardian? Lumen was at a loss. The situation was a lot more complicated than he imagined. At least he managed to confirm that none of his teammates are directly connected to Fug. He had his suspicions that Bam might be alive, but he didn't tell that to his group. Rather he sent a message to Diana to see what she thinks about the whole situation. She, like him, had the same thoughts. But she wasn't sure how Fug managed to fool the guardian. Diana did advise him to be more careful in the future since he was most likely on Fug's radar now. She also said she will be on the lookout for any regulars that matches Bam's appearance. Since Lumen would surely meet more members of that organization in the future, he would get to ask them his questions at that point. As long as no rankers are present, he was sure he would be able to deal with Fug's members. Since the discussion ended, it was time to finish up the test. After the group brought the golden bull back to its shed, they were teleported back to the Ursula. Unlike the previous time, they weren't sent to a giant room, but to a vast forest. This was the 4th and personal level of Dan. A place Lumen had visited quite often in his stay on the 4th floor. The ruler of the floor was in front of them, alongside 3 of his administrators. Lumen was instantly able to recognize one of them. Bright orange hair and wearing an orange dress. The woman's facial features looked identical to orange. She was looking at the group as if looking at prey. She licked her lips and said, "I'd bet you will all scream like little girls when I chop you up." Dan shot her a look and ordered her. "Green, get out here. Bring out orange." Green looked reluctant but complied with his order. They all saw her hair turn from green to orange in front of their eyes. She looked around for a bit and noticed the dress she is wearing. "Oh my, I'm wearing a green dress," she said even though she was clearly wearing an orange one. She instantly undressed in front of everyone and put on a green dress. Alexei and Lisa started drooling when they saw her figure with only her underwear on. But a chop to the head by Andresi ended that. Perverts. I prefer green a lot more. She cheerfully stated. Not only did she have a split personality, but she was also color-blind. With that out of the way, Dan turned towards the group. I didn't expect anything less from you lot. His thick voice filled the forest. Lumen, 2 princesses of Zahard, and Verdi. Had you failed with such a team, you would be nothing but an embarrassment. He praised only those 4 without even putting the rest into consideration. Dan laughed out and walked up to Lumen. He put his hand over Lumen's shoulder and nearly caused him to sink into the ground. I'm sad that you are leaving so early, little friend. Never thought I'd have so much fun sparring with a regular before. With Dan being so close to him, Lumen felt his eardrums popping. I know you already refused me, but do consider my offer. I'm sure you will become a ranker in the future, so you will be able to get an even better position in the family. You could possibly even get more than 1 wife. I myself personally have 6 of them. Hearing him, Lumen rolled his eyes. If they are anything like the ones you introduced me, I'd rather kill myself. Dan had introduced him to a few of his wives, and Lumen wasn't really impressed. Since all 4 of them were animals. Dan had a weird taste when it came to women. Lumen is not into bestiality, but he didn't dare tell him that, though. I'll pass for now. I enjoy my freedom. Lumen answered him. Don't be like that, little friend. You could even consider Verdi. She might not have the family traits, but she is definitely from a branch family of ours. Dan really tried pushing him, but Lumen shook his head in refusal. Verdi was more like the little sister he never had and not a love interest. Such a shame, but you do remind me of my younger days when I was a wild and free beast. Make sure to visit me when you become a ranker. We will have an amazing fight between ourselves. I can't wait to go all out against you when you become a ranker. Dan was truly impressed with Lumen's talent and had taken a liking to him. He was the first regular that had taken more than 1 hit from him and survived after all. Dan was sure that Lumen will become a ranker, and he couldn't wait to see how strong he will become in the future. Either way, congratulations on passing the test, regulars. You will all be awarded 3000 points. Dan congratulated the group and teleported them to the next floor. Wow, I understand now why you are so interested in that Lumen fellow. An administrator with blue hair exclaimed. He was the one that monitored the test on the floor with his lighthouse. Unlike Diana's ship, the Ursula wasn't equipped with high-level lighthouses and observers. Her ship is a very high class, since it was gifted to her by her father, Po B. D'Augustin. Since Dan had no way of observing the regulars, he had brought a ranker with a high-level lighthouse to observe the tests for him. The blue-haired ranker was watching Lumen kill off all the regulars in the mountain area. That has to be the fastest regular I've ever seen. The fastest regular. That surprised Dan. He knew Lumen is strong, but he didn't think he is the fastest regular out there. His strong points were his tough body and his regeneration ability, alongside his talent as an anima. Definitely. Take a look, Dan. The blue-haired administrator answered and showed him the footage starting from the start of the test. Dan saw him summon Saber and get on her back. The 2 started hunting regulars, and he saw him shooting light beams. That didn't impress him much since he believed they won't do much damage to him. But it seems he is also a talented wave controller. The 2 reached the castle and settled down in front of it. Any regular that came afterward was killed by his light beams. That continued on until the 3 cloaked regulars came. They talked for a moment, but Lumen suddenly moved so fast, he almost appeared to be teleporting. He easily killed off 2 of the regulars and then started torturing the other one for some reason. That little bastard! Dan roared out. He actually held back while fighting me. He wasn't sure what to think about this. A regular dared to hold back while fighting a high ranker. He didn't think that it would have changed the outcome of their spar, but still, he actually held back. Dan was impressed by his guts. That made him like Lumen even more. He was dead set on making him join his family now. They might be one of the 10 great families, but this was something else. Such a talent, can't be missed out on. Immediately he sent Lumen a message. You sure have guts holding back against me. I will definitely make you join my family, like it or not. I'm sorry, I enjoy my freedom. You don't have a choice in this matter. Dan tried sending him another message, but a notification popped up. User has blocked you and can't receive your message. Dan gnashed his teeth but immediately sent a message to Verdi. Verdi, listen to me. I don't care how, but I want you to seduce Lumen. Get him to join the Lopo BIA family. But I don't want to. He knew she is a bit eccentric, so he sent her another message. Verdi, this is an important matter. You have to do it. I promise you will be greatly rewarded. Unfortunately for him, he saw another notification. User has blocked you and can't receive your message. Dan stared at the notification for a moment, before he started laughing. Regulars had dared go against his words. That has never happened since he became a high ranker. With a massive grin on his face, he contacted his family, asking for any regulars that are currently climbing the tower and letting them know about Lumen. I've already decided you will become part of the family, let's see how you'll get out of this situation. Dan laughter echoed through the 4th level of his ship. Meanwhile, Lumen's group was teleported to an empty room. The room was completely enclosed without a single window or door. They were all looking around in confusion, wondering what's the deal with that. A few minutes passed before a blonde girl with glasses appeared. She was wearing blue jeans, a pink tank top and was chewing gum. Welcome to Gregory's floor, regulars. My name is Trixie, and I'm an administrator on the floor. The fat pig is stuffing himself like usual, so I will introduce you to the 5th floor. She told them while blowing bubbles with her gum. The test of this floor is a battle royale, but before you are allowed to participate, you have to go through a pre-test to prove that you are worthy. Each one of you will be teleported to another empty room, and you will have to face off against 5 regulars from this floor. You will have to fight them one after the other. You either have to kill your opponent or make him surrender. How you do it is up to you. Most of them are greedy bastards like the floor ruler, so they can be swayed if you offer them points. If you fail, you will be sent back to where you came from. Those who pass will be allowed to participate in the battle royale. Only a total of 10 regulars will be allowed to pass for each test. You don't lose anything for failing the battle royale unless you get killed, that is. Trixie blew another bubble, but that was bigger than normal. It popped and covered her whole face. Ah, not again. Whatever, I already explained all the details. Good luck in your pre-test, regulars. We will meet again if you manage to pass it. Trixie teleported away from the room. After that, each and every member from Lumen's team was sent to an enclosed room like the one they were already in. Chapter 23, 5th Floor. Lumen and his team caused a commotion on the 5th floor with their arrival. Out of 45 regulars that were chosen to test out the newly advanced regulars, every single one of them died. That is something that hasn't happened in years. An unspoken rule of the floor is that even if you kill 1 or 2 regulars during the pre-test, you will work it out with the rest. You will make some kind of deal with the others by giving out some of your points or even joining their team. After all, not everyone can fight 5 regulars in a row. Trixie had also hinted at that. Unfortunately, Lumen's team isn't a conventional one. Every single member is the best amongst their position. They had also trained with him and grew even more. Without even improving their current strength, they could easily reach the 20th floor without even trying. They are by far the best of the best, for being regulars of the lower floors of the tower. A lot of teams from the 5th floor were unhappy with the newly arrived group. They had lost members from their teams, and they sought out revenge from Lumen's team. They wanted some form of compensation for their lost teammates. Be in the form of points or new members for their group. But every single regular that approached them with that in mind had lost their life. This caused another commotion on the 5th floor since they realized how strong that team is. To top it off, a princess of Zahard was in that group. That made them even more dangerous. A princess gets chosen every 100 years, so one climbing the tower is a big deal. Princesses of Zahard are considered the national treasure of the tower since they carry the king's blood. Every single princess that has climbed the tower has managed to reach the top and become a ranker. The only exceptions to that are when a princess kills another princess during her climb. News about Andresi Zahard slowly started to spread not only on the 5th floor but throughout the whole tower as well. Regulars and rankers started gossiping about her and her team. Each one impressed with the group she had gathered. Everyone was talking about how strong the princess is and how much potential she has. How her team is full of top-level regulars for being on such a low floor. Andresi was being praised left and right for being able to gather such a group. They all had great expectations from her. But all of that was quickly forgotten, when a day later, the news that Andresi is in fact not the leader nor the strongest of that group reached them. And the regular that is supposed to be stronger than her is not even from the 10 great families or someone famous. This caused another stir amongst the residents of the tower. A princess of Zahard is not the strongest in her team? She has the king's blood, but someone unknown is stronger than her? They started talking about how Andrasi might end up being an embarrassment for a princess. How she might not be worthy of the king's blood. Regulars from the 5th floor tried challenging Lumen's team yet again, but that ended terribly. They thought that since the princess might, in fact, be weak, they could potentially gang up on her and her team. That day was remembered for the rivers of blood that filled the 5th floor. Over 200 regulars had marched up to his team. Each seeking revenge, fame, or the chance to get a princess of Zahard as their teammate. Every single regular that approached them had died, and they were all killed by just a single regular. The one that was supposed to be the leader and the strongest of that group. Without even moving a muscle, he had created a sun-like object with his shinsu. Every regular that neared him or his team was shot down by a light beam from the sun-like object. The fight hadn't even lasted for more than a minute, and more than 200 regulars died. The residents of the tower were astonished by his actions. Talks about him being the best wave controller amongst the regulars from the lower floors were common between them. Some even believed his shinsu control might be at the level of those from the upper floors. Others even talked about how his shinsu control might be as good as a ranker's. They also gave him various monikers, as well. Very few regulars are granted this privilege, but due to his actions and strength, he received a few nicknames. There's also the fact they didn't know his real name. The Light Terror for his terrifying control of light. The Light Demon, for his demonic way of killing over 200 regulars. The Light's End, for his light, is the last you will see before you die. But the most famous one being White Star, named after the technique he used to slaughter over 200 regulars since it resembled a miniature sun. News about Lumen filled the whole tower, and he was the hottest topic at the moment. There was not a single resident in the tower that hasn't heard of the bloodbath on the 5th floor, and the one that caused it. The ruler of the 5th floor was unhappy with Lumen's actions, but he didn't do anything about it. Killing is allowed on his floor and Lumen hadn't broken any rules. Gregory couldn't even kill him in secret since all eyes were currently on White Star. 2 days later came another shocking news. The Lopo Bia family came out, claiming White Star as one of their own. They stated that although he is not someone from their family, he is bound to marry into theirs. That has already been decided and is set in stone. Before the residents of the tower could process that information, another surprising news was released from the Hendo Lok family. The family with the least amount of influence from the 10 great families. The Hendo Lok family has the least amount of rankers amongst the 10 great families, and that is due to a contract that Hendo Lok Blood Matter, the family head, had made with a guardian. In exchange for eternal life, everyone that carries his blood will be cursed with a short lifespan. Due to that, the rankers that uphold the Hendo family are all Blood Matter's adopted sons and daughters. The news from the Hendo Lok family came from the family head himself. Blood Matter stated that once White Star becomes a ranker, he will adopt him in his family. And should he become a ranker within the next 200 years, only Blood Matter himself will have a higher position than him. The tower was in an uproar that 2 of the 10 great families were trying to recruit a regular that has just started his climb. But that showed how talented and how much potential White Star has. Gregory was more than happy that he didn't do anything to Lumen after hearing those news. Although a ranker, he didn't have the backing of any of the 10 great families. While the whole tower was discussing Lumen and his team, they were preparing for the test of the 5th floor. As Trixie told them, the test is a battle royale. Only 100 regulars may participate each time, and you have to sing up at least a few months ahead, in order to get a spot. Thankfully, since Lumen killed off so many regulars, there were enough spots open for him and his team. If that incident hadn't happened, they would have had to wait for a few months before they can take the test. They had all signed up for the upcoming Battle Royale. The participants of the next test were all scared out of their minds when they learned that White Star and his team will be participating. Had they had the option of not competing, they would have surely taken it. They were at least grateful that they had the choice of surrendering as soon as the test starts. That's something that they all planned on doing the first chance they got. Each participant is given a green badge before the start of the test. Everyone that owns one will be teleported to a random location on a field on the 5th floor. And you could pass the test in 2 ways. In 2 hours, the regulars would have to reach the middle of the stage and stay there for 15 minutes without dying. The first 10 regulars that stay in the middle for 15 minutes get to pass the test. This is the first way. The second way to pass the test is by being the 10 last regulars participating in the Battle Royale. Each regular has the option of crushing the badge that they are given and forfeit the test. They would then be teleported out of the stage for the Battle Royale. As soon as the test started, every single regular that was participating instantly crushed their badge. Not a single one dared to try going against White Star, the one that killed over 200 regulars in less than a minute. Everyone except the lucky regular that couldn't crush his badge in time. Since only 10 regulars were left in the test, he got to pass the test alongside Lumen and his team. The regular had a very unassuming appearance. Short stature with brown hair and brown eyes. He looked like a normal human with nothing special about him. He fumbled with his badge and dropped it before being able to crush it, which led to him passing with Lumen and his team. They were all teleported to a spacious room with 4 people already waiting for them. One standing in the front, with the other 3 respectively staying behind him. Trixie was one of those 3. Obviously, the one standing in the front was the ruler of the 5th floor. Gregory had a very obese appearance. He was as width as he was tall, and he was chomping on a drumstick while watching the regulars that passed the test with a hateful look. Gregory's gaze was mostly focused on the one that caused all the commotion on his floor. No matter how unhappy he was with Lumen's actions, he didn't dare do anything against him. Not only would his prestige as a ranker drop, but 2 of the 10 great families were very interested in Lumen. His gaze also jumped to Andrassy from time to time. Whenever he looked at her, he visibly started to drool, but again, he didn't dare do anything. She was a princess of Zahard after all, and her backing was even scarier than Lumen. Gregory took a bite of his drumstick and with a hateful tone spoke to them. "You passed the test, yada yada, you get 3000 points as a reward. Yada yada, don't come back to my floor." Gregory didn't want to waste any time with those detestable regulars. His gaze lingered a bit on Andrassy before he teleported the group away. The news of Lumen and his team advancing to the 6th floor spread throughout the tower. They had managed to pass the 5th floor in record time. And the way they did it, added even more prestige to their name. Especially to Lumen's. The residents of the tower were telling stories about how regulars on the same floors as White Star didn't even dare go up against him. Lumen's fame reached sky-high levels, and you couldn't find a resident of the tower that hadn't heard about White Star, be it regular or ranker. After all, it's not every day that you see an unknown regular that's even stronger than a princess of Zahard. Had he been a member of one of the 10 great families, this wouldn't have caused such a stir, but he wasn't. To top it off, 2 of the 10 great families had already expressed their desire for this unknown regular. All eyes were on him and his group, wondering what other commotion will they cause next. Chapter 24, 6th Floor, 1. It's been a few days since Lumen and his team reached the 6th floor. They were granted a residence large enough to house 13 people during their stay. The building was 3-story high, with plenty of rooms for everyone to have their own. Alexei was in the kitchen, cooking something for the rest of the group. The big redhead was surprisingly a very good cook. Alexei expressed his interest when they were granted the house, and since everyone enjoyed his cooking, he has been taking care of their food situation. Lore was in his room, sleeping like usual. Nothing much changes with the green-haired regular. Hatsu was on the roof of the building, working on a new sword technique. He has been on the verge of some kind of breakthrough and has been pushing himself for the past few days. Verdi was in the living room, playing house with her newly acquired dolls. They might have been on the 6th floor for only a few days, but she already had a dozen new puppets added to her collection. Lumen and Lisa were also in the living room, but they were sharing a beer while watching television. The rest of the group were out exploring the 6th floor and shopping. No matter where you go, women will always love shopping. Lumen took a sip of his drink and changed the channel in annoyance. "Floor, and I'm Poppy Gloria. I've received some insider information from a member of the Lopo BIA family. I was told that the reason they are so sure that White Star will marry into their family is that he has already accepted a dowry from them. It is a well-known fact that the ruler of the 4th floor is a high ranker of the Lopo BIA family. White Star did recently pass through that floor, so it's very possible he had struck some kind of a deal with Dan." Lumen took another sip from his beer and switched the channel again, while Lisa snickered from his actions. Locke family is known for adopting rankers and high rankers into their family, but such an offer has never been given to a regular before. This just shows how much potential White Star has. Tired from hearing the same thing over and over again, Lumen switched the TV off. He expected something to happen after the incident on the 5th floor, but this was too much. Had Lumen killed over 200 people in public on Earth, he would go down as one of the worst serial killers of his time. In the tower, however, that is a whole different story. The residents didn't label him as a serial killer. Rather, they glorified his actions and spoke how talented he is. Although he knew he is in a different place with different views, he didn't think he would become a superstar from going on a killing spree. Lumen also didn't think that over 200 regulars could gather that easily to go after him and his team. Yes, on a floor where there are thousands of regulars, that number didn't seem that big, but he had his suspicions about the incident. They had simply gathered way too fast. Someone definitely had a hand in that. Someone that had connections throughout the whole tower, and could easily rally over 200 regulars. Lumen could currently think of only one possible answer to this. Fug. Nevertheless, that incident that could have labeled him as one of the worst criminals on Earth was forgotten almost as soon as it happened. All the residents of the tower were now gossiping about the two great families that are interested in him. To them, that was more important than him killing over 200 regulars. Lumen could understand the Lopo Bia family due to Dan pulling some strings. It was a low blow from his part since he did gift Saber to Lumen in the end, just not in the form of a dowry, but he could understand that. The Hendo Locke family was a whole different matter. He had absolutely no connection to them whatsoever. Blood Matter had even given his ultimatum that if Lumen reaches the top of the tower within 200 years, he would only be under him in the family. 200 years. That's too much. I'm definitely going to reach it faster than that. I don't even know if I will get to live for another 200 years. Lumen thought. Unlike the rest of the regulars that come from the tower, he came from Earth. Humans there don't live past 100 that easily. Lumen didn't even know if those that look like humans from the tower are actually human since they could live for hundreds of years. He was granted 3 devil fruits from Loki, but devil fruit users in the One Piece world didn't live for hundreds of years. Lumen didn't know how him having 3 of them will affect his lifespan, nor did he know if Shinsu could increase it as well. So he didn't plan on taking hundreds of years to reach the top. In his mind, he was working on a time limit. He could risk it and try to take his time, but there was no guarantee that he would live past 100 years and look as young and healthy as he is now. So, White Star, how's the fame working for you? Lisu asked him with a laugh. Fuck you. Lumen's response made him laugh even harder. Did you seriously not expect this? Lisu asked him. I was expecting something, just not this. Every news channel is talking about me and the two families. Lumen answered him while letting out a sigh. Really? Really? Come on. The 2 leaders of those families are from the 10 great warriors that climbed and conquered the tower alongside King Zahard. Not only are they one of the strongest rankers in the tower, but they also possess the largest amount of political influence as well. Even if only one family was interested in you, everyone would still be gossiping about you. But no, 2 of them have expressed their interest in you, a regular that's only on the 6th floor of the tower. That has never happened before. Your fame is even higher than Andrasi, who is a princess of Zahard. Yeah, I get it. 10 great families, woohoo, big deal. Do you have any strategies and plans for tomorrow's test? Lumen had no desire to talk about his fame and just wanted to change the subject. Well, I have a few things in mind, but that would depend on the terrain that we get. Either way, with the Great White Star on our side, we don't need strategies. Lisu couldn't resist teasing him, knowing how uncomfortable Lumen felt with his fame and moniker. With a huge grin on his face, he was barely holding his laughter. You are pushing your luck. That statement alone and the small bloodlust coming from Lumen, made Lisu's smile disappear. In an instant, he was on his knees, with his forehead touching the ground. I'm so sorry. Please don't kill me. Just get up. Lisu didn't move from his spot and kept his head against the ground. You won't kill me, right? Weakly, he asked. Just get up. As if having the Pika Pika know me, Lisu got up with light speed. Grab me another beer and tell me your thoughts on the test. Lisu obediently got him a beer from the fridge, and the 2 started discussing tomorrow's test. When Lumen's team and the lucky regular that passed with them reached the 6th floor, they were greeted by the most disgusting being they have seen so far. Long dirty black hair that could have been any other color if it was washed. Wearing a stained brown shirt that was once white and green cargo pants. The man in question was cleaning his ear with one of his fingers when they first saw him. He pulled his finger out of his ear, sniffed it, and licked it clean. Without even batting an eye at the group, the man started picking his nose afterward. Again, he pulled out his finger, looked at it with happiness, seeing the large booger on it, and licked it clean. "That's the good stuff!" he exclaimed after eating his booger. He repeated the same action a few times when he finally felt satisfied. He turned towards the regulars with a big grin on his face. "Ah, I know you," he said while pointing at Lumen. "You are the guy that everyone is talking about. Either way, I'm Bob, the test director on the 6th floor. Zaza, the ruler of the floor, had some business to take care of, so I will be handling all the matters on the floor for the time being." He straightened his shirt as if that would make a difference. "I officially welcome you to the 6th floor, regulars. For successfully reaching the floor, you will be granted a free radiance." "No, the word was refinance, I think." No, that's not it, it was residence." "Yeah, residence, that's the one. You will get a free residence." He pulled out a keycard and threw it to the group. "That will also include free food, but since we don't have chefs on the floor, you will have to cook for yourselves." Bob looked pleased with his speech and was about to go on his way. "Hey, aren't you going to tell us about the test on the floor?" Liso questioned him. "Oh, yeah. I'm supposed to do that as well, aren't I?" Bob answered while scratching his dirty hair. "So, the test is called Tower Defense. You can challenge the test with a maximum of 11 members. You will have to face another team of regulars. Each test takes place in a random location. Could be in a forest, could be in a rocky area. Every time it's a different field. Each team of regulars has its own half of that field. Each team will have to be separated into 3 different groups. The base team, which could only have only one member that will be chosen randomly. That member would be given a special badge, that when destroyed by the other team, will result in your team failing. The regular holding the base badge is forbidden from attacking or defending, but can move around freely within their half. And, the other 2 groups are the tower team and the minion team. You have to have an equal amount of members in each team. Members from the tower team can only be placed in their half of the field, and can only move around within a specific zone. The members from the minion team can move around anywhere. They can attack the other regulars' tower and base teams. They could also fight with the other minion teams as well. That's about it. Oh, and also, you have to sign up in advance to take the test. I think the next free spot is in about 2 months, or something like that. I think that's all." Bob picked his nose again and pulled out another booger. His eyes started shining when he saw it, and he ate the booger in delight. "I knew I had saved up one for later. I'm such a smart guy," he exclaimed happily as he left the group of regulars that were watching him in disgust. "Filthy animal! What a disgusting pig!" Andrassy and Tiana commented, repulsed by Bob's actions. The unassuming brown-haired regular was feeling a bit awkward and decided to introduce himself. He had the slightest hope of maybe joining Lumen's team. Hello guys. My name." He couldn't even get to say his name since a giant pink octopus appeared behind him. One of its tentacles wrapped around the regular, stopping him from speaking further. "New floor, new dolls, yay!" Verdi exclaimed while clapping. The regular's eyes widened in fear as his life force was sucked away. His facial expression soon turned blank, as Verdi happily stored him in her dollhouse. Lumen's first order of business was to go and sign his team for the test. He also wanted to see if he could potentially shorten the time needed since he didn't feel like waiting for a couple of months. Surprisingly, that wasn't a problem at all. Teams were, in fact, happy to give their position to his team. The chance of talking to him or even getting to meet him was more than enough for them. Some even tried their luck of joining his team, but he denied them all. Lumen didn't expect to become so famous that regulars would be happy to give their position away to him, but it wasn't that bad. This way, his team could get to take the test 2 months earlier than anticipated. Chapter 25, 6th Floor, 2. Lumen's whole group had gathered, ready to take the test on the 6th floor. His team had only 9 members, so they were a bit at a disadvantage when it comes to numbers since the other team had 11. Despite their current fame, the other team didn't look to be afraid of them the least bit. The regulars looked confident in competing against them. Each member had a smug look on their face while staring at Lumen and his team. The location for the test was chosen, and it was underground. One of the rarer fields for the tower defense. They were shown the layout of the location. On each side, there was an underground cavern that branched out into 5 paths. The paths had twists and turns, but in the end, they merged into a single one, which is in the middle of the field, the neutral zone. It's also where the minion teams would have to pass through to reach the other side. Both groups had their member for the base team randomly chosen, and Anik was the one that was picked from Lumen's team. With that out of the way, they selected the members for the other teams. Lore, Alexei, Diana, and Verdi were chosen as the tower team, while Lumen, Andrassy, Hatsu, and Lisa were placed on the minion team. Their plan was a simple one. Each member from the tower team will guard one of the paths, and since they were lacking 2 members, Lisa would also act as part of the tower team. In the end, even if the opponent minion team manages to pass through either one of them, Lumen was sure that Anik would have no problem escaping from them. But just in case, Hatsu would be staying with her, acting as her bodyguard. Lumen and Andrassy, on the other hand, will be the ones attacking the opponent team. With you two going after them, I don't see us losing this game. Lisa confidently said. HMPF, I could do it alone. Andrassy smugly said and turned towards Lumen. Want to make a bet at who would get the other team's badge? The winner gets 1 wish from the loser. How does that sound? She asked. Sure, let's do this. Lumen replied, confident in his speed. Having the Pika Pika no Mi, he didn't think someone could be faster than him. Haha, yes. Just remember the bet when you end up losing. Andrassy laughed out with a smile. Lumen just rolled his eyes at her childish antics. In a moment, they were all transported to the underground cavern. Since each member of the group already knew their role, he didn't bother staying with them even for a second. Transforming into his Logia form, he disappeared from his spot and made a beeline towards the other side. Andrassy was wide-eyed as she saw him rush towards the enemy direction. Fuck, you're cheating! Screaming out, she ran after him. It didn't take Lumen long to reach the place where the paths converge. And he soon reached the middle of the field, the neutral zone. Just as he stepped foot there, he felt something off. He wasn't sure what, but the whole place felt empty and different. It took him a moment to realize what was wrong. Shinsu basically didn't exist in the neutral zone. There was so little flowing there, that it didn't even make a difference. Alarm bells were ringing in his head, but Lumen didn't know what to look for. With his guard up, he slowly stepped inside. 2 steps in, and he felt like someone was watching him. Someone was observing him like a predator eyeing his prey. That feeling annoyed him to no end since he wasn't used to be in the position of prey. When he reached near the middle of the neutral zone, he felt a tremor. Walls were erected on both sides, blocking off the exits. The small amount of Shinsu that flowing through the tunnel soon disappeared as well. Ha! I got you now. Lumen heard the voice of Bob, but he couldn't pinpoint where it came from. Suddenly, a hole opened up on the side of the tunnel, and the test director showed himself. He casually walked in, with a finger up his nose. You know, I had to go through a lot of trouble to set this up. But the higher UPS are really displeased with your actions. Bob told him while licking his finger. So, you're part of FUG? What's so important about my teammates, that you are going so far them? Lumen asked him while thinking of ways that he could deal with him. Obviously, they are hostages. But, I shouldn't tell you that. Bob carelessly replied. Hostages? Who is being threatened with their safety? Lumen was trying to find out more about the whole situation, while also trying to form a bong. Unfortunately, he had no luck with the second part. I can't tell you that we are threatening an irregular with his friends. That's top secret information, you know. Bob replied, not even realizing what he had just said. So, Bam actually didn't die. Lumen commented. What? How do you know that? Bob's eyes widened in surprise. Are you also a member of FUG? But even if you are, the higher UPS want you dead. Bob didn't waste any more time and ran towards him. He moved extremely quickly and reached Lumen in a second. Lumen was extremely confident in fighting him in an environment with no Jinsu. He planned on letting the attack go through his element form, but something didn't feel right. At the last moment, he managed to bring his arms up to block the attack. Despite being in his Logia form, he was sent flying and crashed into the walls of the tunnel. Both of his arms were badly damaged and twisted at a weird angle. Right before he was sent flying, he managed to shoot a blast of light beams at Bob. Sadly, a purple round shield appeared in front of the test director and blocked the point-blank lasers. Bob, although not the brightest out there, had strengthened his body with Shinsu before coming into the neutral zone. Had he chosen no to, Lumen would have easily beat him with his devil fruit abilities. To top it off, he had an armor inventory as well. An item that is not only able to store other equipment but can also serve as a protection tool. Quickly getting up, Lumen used his Phoenix Flames to heal his injury. How are you doing that? There should be no Shinsu here. Bob looked puzzled. First, he shot him with a laser, then he healed his wounds with a weird white flame. He was only told that Lumen is an extremely proficient wave controller, and there was no mention of those weird abilities. Guess I just need to punch you until you die. Bob dashed towards him once again. Unlike before, Lumen was prepared this time. Despite that, he still let Bob's attack to hit him. The moment they made contact, Lumen applied the maximum amount of gravity he could use on him. Bob felt pressure like never before. It felt like the whole world was crushing him, and he could barely move his muscles. What did you do? He actually had a similar ability, but he couldn't use it due to the lack of Shinsu. Bob was beyond confused at how Lumen was able to use all those abilities without Shinsu. Lumen didn't respond to him. He stood up and healed his wounds again. With the gravity on Bob, he felt confident in his fight. Lumen turned his body into his Logia form, but also added something else in the mix. From his shoulder blades sprouted two white flaming wings. Something that he recently picked up on. Transforming his hands into wings felt a bit awkward to him, so he figured out a way around it. This also allowed him more options when attacking someone. Now, we can play by my rules. With a grin, he sped off towards Bob. With his speed and wings, he would attack him from any direction. From the front, back, sides, or from the top as well. Lumen was pushing himself to the limit, but the purple shield would always pop up and block his attacks. He would mix in his light beams with his attacks, but even that didn't break through the shield. But during that time, he noticed that Bob was actually following his movements, despite him going at max speed. Lumen knew that he couldn't move at the actual speed of light, but he was disappointed that the other party was able to follow him. He also had to figure out a way to deal with him as soon as possible, since he was feeling him resist the increased gravity. Bob, proving that he is a ranker for a reason, was struggling to break free of the pressure that Lumen used on him. He knew that with just a bit more time, he would be free. All he had to do is block his attacks until then. Lumen was struggling what to do when he remembered one of the first ways he learned to use his Pika Pika no Mi. He made sure that Bob was looking in his direction and snapped his fingers. Light illuminated the whole tunnel, blinding Bob in the process. Pushing himself to the limit, he sped off in his direction. He kicked, using his maximum speed, and his leg landed straight onto Bob's head. The upper half of his head completely disappeared while his body crashed into the tunnel's wall. Letting out a sigh of relief, he cursed at him. Damn, filthy bastard. Had it been any other regular in his situation, death was a guarantee. With no Shinsu flowing in the tunnel, the regular won't have a way of defending himself. Thankfully, Lumen was an irregular who had 3 devil fruit powers as well. Lumen made his way to Bob's corpse to confirm his kill and to loot him as well. The purple shield gave him a lot of trouble, so he was definitely going to get that. Surprisingly, he found 2 of them. Armor inventories are extremely expensive, so regulars normally don't own one. Now, Lumen had 2 of them. He didn't know how strong they are, but he will test it out in the future. With the disgusting test director dealt with, he planned on letting out some steam against the opponent team. They definitely knew that Bob would interfere in the test, considering their smug and arrogant looks. He was taking his time when he realized he was starting to run out of breath. Shit, I better hurry. Lumen reached the exit leading to the opponent's field and saw the wall blocking it. Charging his light powers, he blasted a hole big enough so he can pass through it. Since he knew the appearance of the badge holder, he went for everyone else first. In a dozen minutes or so, he had gone through all the tunnels on the other side and killed everyone he met. The last regular was staring at him in disbelief as he watched Lumen walk towards him. But how? You shouldn't be alive. Turns out, I'm a lot harder to kill than expected. A laser pierced the regular's head, and he fell on the ground. Lumen walked up to him, found the badge, and crushed it. With that, his team was teleported out of the underground area. In front of them were 2 test administrators that were looking around in confusion. Bob had told them that he is going to the toilet, but he hadn't come back yet. Despite that, they've been test administrators for a long time, so they quickly snapped out of their confusion. Congratulations, regulars! You have successfully passed the test on the 6th floor. As a reward, all of you will be granted 4000 points, and you will be teleported to the next floor shortly. A brown-haired woman told them. His teammates looked as that is the most natural thing ever. With Andrassy and Lumen working together, they didn't even think they could lose the tower defense. Andrassy, on the other hand, was staring at Lumen with hateful eyes. You cheated. You had a head start, and you even blocked my way. The bet doesn't count. She was definitely a sore loser. Chapter 26, 7th Floor, 1. At an unknown floor in the tower, a group of cloaked individuals had gathered around a round table. We've lost contact with Hobo Catfish from the 6th floor. His last report was before he went to deal with White Star. Sighed one of the individuals. Bob had the moniker of Hobo Catfish due to his dirty and scavenging habits. We provided him with a step-by-step plan on how to deal with the situation there. All he had to do was follow the damn plan. What do you mean we lost contact with him? Another member questioned while slamming his fist on the table. Clearly unhappy with what he was told. They had given Bob a detailed plan on how to deal with Lumen, and how to avoid the sight of the guardian of the floor. They had specifically sent him an item that could filter out the Shinsu in an enclosed area. Without Shinsu, the guardian would be unable to see what's happening in the tunnel. Leaving Bob, a ranker, to easily take care of Lumen, who is a simple regular. We don't know what happened, but we haven't been able to contact Hobo Catfish since then. White Star has also been reported to have reached the 7th floor. The first individual that spoke explained to the rest. So, you are telling us that a regular from the 6th floor somehow managed to take down a ranker, when the conditions were in the ranker's favor? Another member asked in wonder. He couldn't understand how that's possible. Not a single member there was willing to believe that a regular was able to deal with a ranker. Especially so, when the area they should have been fighting was void of Shinsu. In order to become a ranker, you would have to climb to the 134th floor of the tower. While climbing, your body would be molded by the Shinsu on each floor. The higher you reach, the denser the Shinsu becomes, and in return, the stronger your physical body becomes. So Bob should have had a way stronger body than Lumen, who had just started his climb. To top it off, they had instructed him to strengthen his body with Shinsu before going in the void area. Yet, despite having a foolproof plan, something had gone wrong. The problem was that they didn't know what went wrong. No matter how they saw it, Bob should have killed Lumen as easily as crushing an ant. There's all that talk, that the Lopo Bia family had already given him a dowry. It's possible that's true, and he could have been given an incredibly strong creature. A member that had been quiet until now spoke up, and the others turned their attention to him. They were the first to express their interest in him. Maybe he is an exceptionally talented anima as well, which could be the reason they want him in their family. He gave his reasoning. Then why hasn't this been made public already? Why hasn't White Star confirmed that he will marry into the Lopo Bia family and that he had received a creature like that? Why hasn't he came out and told everyone about what happened on that floor? Won't that make him even more famous than what he already is? Killing a ranker as a regular is an amazing prestige, even if you had the help of a creature. Someone questioned him. This was starting to get out of hand. They could accept that White Star is an exceptionally good wave controller since he most likely had spent his entire life working on his Shinsu control. But now, he could also end up being an especially talented anima as well. Then what's next? Would he end up with an extremely strong physical body, as well? How many special traits would just a single regular end up having? That didn't seem likely to the gathered individuals since they would have known about such a person in the tower. Whatever the case may be, White Star is someone that we need to take care of. The best thing would be if we could replace his position on that team with someone of ours. That's something everyone in the room agreed with. Have we received any information about him from Hedon? Usually, he would give us a heads up on regulars like White Star. One of them questioned. The moment the last word left his mouth, another cloaked individual entered the room. I just now received information about him from Hedon. The member that just entered sat on the table and massaged his temple. That's some pretty good timing. What did he say? One of the members eagerly asked. They practically had zero information on White Star. He was an enigma that appeared out of nowhere. Do you want to hear the bad news or the worst news? That question momentarily froze everyone in the room. Give us the bad news first. Someone finally answered. Bad news is, he is another irregular. Everyone gulped hearing that. That was just the bad news. 2 irregulars had just entered the tower, and that's an unprecedented event in itself. One of them was very knowledgeable about the tower and understood it very well. The other one was a very unrefined diamond with a lot of potential. They were planning on refining that gem and molding him to their desire. Now, there is a third one as well, which seems to have more potential than the ones they currently have. This is just when comparing them at the moment. If Bam had to fight over 200 regulars, he would surely lose his life. While White Star was easily able to kill them off in less than a minute. Should the two increase in strength at the same pace, White Star would end up being stronger than Bam for sure. They might have ended up with the short end of the stick. Another irregular. Are you joking? The tower has a total of 5 irregulars if we count the 2 that we have. And now you are telling us there is a third as well. If we count White Star, that means the tower has a total of 6 irregulars. Half of them had entered the tower at the same time. What does this event signify? The whole situation sounded absurd to the gathered individuals. Irregulars were an extremely rare occurrence, and each time they appeared, they had created chaos, and their presence alone has caused the tower to change in various ways. Now there are 3 of them at the same time. What kind of chaos would they end up causing? But at least, they could understand White Star a bit more, knowing he is an irregular. They understood why he was given so much attention from everyone else. The others might not know that he is an irregular, but they were all drawn to him in some way. He had that type of aura about him, as the one other irregulars have. I don't care what that means. What's the worst news if this is the bad news? An individual that has stayed silent throughout the whole conversation asked. The one that told them about Lumen being an irregular let out a short chuckle. The kind of laugh where despite knowing how bad the situation is, you just laugh it out. Hedon said, I quote him, you can do whatever you want, but it won't change a thing. Yo! He couldn't continue since a member slammed his fist into the table, breaking it in the process. What the hell does that mean? The cloaked individual that was speaking let out a sigh and continued quoting Hedon. You can throw whatever you can think of at him, but it won't make a difference. It won't make a difference? Is that stupid rabbit looking down on us? The member that broke the table was fuming with anger. You do remember how strong Urek was when he came into the tower, right? What if he is just as strong, but simply hiding it? Don't forget that Hedon was the one that gave him a test. He must have had his reason for telling us this. Another individual gave his reasoning. I don't care about that. He yelled out his response and turned towards a particular member. Caraka, go and deal with White Star. Either make him join us or kill him. End of the discussion. Meanwhile, on the 77th floor, at the Walhaixong base. A tall, handsome, blonde man with red eyes was sitting on a couch and watching television. The man was wearing a black hoodie and sweatpants similar to the clothes Lumen usually wears. The blonde man was switching through the channels at lightning speed when he finally got tired of that. Turning off the TV, he threw the remote at a wall. The small device broke through the wall as if it was made of paper and flew away. Unfortunately, when the remote made contact with the wall, it hit one of the buttons on it and turned the TV back on. The man then turned in annoyance towards a woman that was in the room. Pink hair, with a childish face, the woman was wearing a red zentai while communication with someone on her pocket. White Star this, White Star that. Why are they all talking about a regular from the 6th floor, when they should be talking about me? Shut up, Urek. When you climbed the tower in a record time of 50 years, absolutely everyone had you in their mouth. And not in the way you wanted it. The pink-haired woman responded to him. But, baby, I'm awesome. Everyone should be talking about me. Look, baby, I'm 100 times more handsome than him. More handsome than who? A woman's voice came from behind him, and Urek turned around just in time to see Princess Yuri and Evan walk into the room. She had just returned from reporting that she now owns 2 of the 13-month series and from visiting one of her adopted sisters. Yuri. Please tell her I'm better looking than this White Star everyone is talking about, baby. Urek told her while pointing at the television. Hey, Evan, isn't that Lumen? Yuri asked the silver dwarf. Yes, that's definitely him. We did miss him on the 2nd floor, but he seems to have gotten quite famous already. Evan replied to her. Wait, baby, you know him. Urek asked Yuri. Can you stop calling me baby? And yes, I know him. I also owe him a date. Her answer caused Urek to stare at her in surprise. His pride was crushed, hearing that a regular managed to score a date with Yuri, while he couldn't. But, baby, you don't even want to go out on a date with me. Why would you go out on a date with a regular? Urek asked her with a trembling voice. He is not a regular, Lumen is an irregular. And I owe him a date because Evan here failed to see his strength. Yuri answered while staring hatefully at Evan. Princess, I told you already that he looked like as normal as the previous one. Please, stop bullying me. Evan replied, embarrassed that he couldn't see through Lumen's strength. He was supposed to be one of the best guides in the tower, yet he couldn't see what's so special about Lumen. Wait, that white star dude is an irregular. Is that what you are saying, baby? Urek jumped from his seat when he heard that. At least it's an irregular that scored a date with Yuri and not a simple regular. He felt relieved. Yes, I was there when he entered the tower, Yuri confirmed. That's good. Now it's more understandable why everyone is talking about him. I will forgive him for that. Urek looked very excited that there's another irregular. Got it. I made up my mind. I'm going to go and see my little bro. Evan, you are coming with me. Urek had already grabbed Evan and was carrying him under his shoulder. Show me the fastest path to the lower floors. With a grin, he commanded the silver dwarf, who looked extremely unwilling. Princess, please help me. He called out to her, hoping she would come to his rescue. You're going to see Lumen? I'm coming with you then. I do owe him a date, after all. I'm not going to go back on my words. Yuri's response made Evan start crying. The poor guide was being used and abused for his special abilities without his consent. Despite him being one of the strongest high rankers, he couldn't do anything about the situation. One is a princess of Zahard, and Evan is her personal guide. The other is one of the strongest existences in the entire tower. There are no more than a handful of rankers that could even compete against him. Urek could probably kill Evan before the guide could think of a way to defend himself. Evan, show us the fastest way to go to Lumen. Yuri commanded him as well. Yes, princess. With tears in his eyes, he complied. He had just recently guided Yuri to the lower floors, and now he would have to do it again. Incidents like this are the moments he regretted being born as a guide. While all of that was happening, Lumen was sitting on a table in a coffee shop and talking with a regular from the 7th floor. So, Vaspa, you call yourself the fastest regular from the lower floors? He asked a short girl with luminous blue-gray hair. She was wearing a blue fur coat and had bee-like wings coming out of her back. Yes, no one can compete with me when it comes to speed. Confidently she replied. We'll see about that. I also heard you are a very talented close combat fighter using a needle. Vaspa's ruthlessness was quite famous on the 7th floor. With more than a dozen stories about her expertise way of handling a specialized needle and her deadly poison. No one has been able to survive after being poisoned by her. No one on this floor can match me in close combat. Arrogantly she replied. Then how about having a spar with me? If you are strong as the regulars say, I will let you join my team. But should you end up as a weakling, you might die during the spar. Lumen asked her with a grin. Ha! Arrogant human. The same goes for you. If you end up being weaker than what is expected from your fame, you might end up dying by my poison. If you can't at least force me to transform into my adult form, then I can guarantee you will definitely die today. Vaspa answered with a grin of her own. But if you prove to be stronger than me, I will join your team and follow your commands. She finished with a more respectful voice. Then it's decided. Follow me. Lumen stood up and Vaspa followed suit. The two exited the coffee shop and made their way towards an open area, where they could have their spar. Chapter 27, 7th Floor, 2. A white and yellow-bluish blurs were flying past each other. The two were moving at such a high speed, that no normal regular from the lower floors could even follow them. The two blurs clashed with each other a few more times, before separating. Lumen watched with a smile the curvaceous woman in front of him. He was holding a spear made of light in his hand, something that he started practicing with recently. Combining his light ability with Shinsu, allows him to keep the shape of the spear stable, and he enjoyed fighting while using it. Vaspa had transformed into her adult form, and she looked exceptionally beautiful. No longer was she a small girl, but she was now a stunning lady who looked in her 20s. Her yellow bee-like wings have grown alongside her and were even bigger than her body. Vaspa was holding a specialized needle that resembled a wasp's stinger. Around her were floating 2 smaller needles, that she would use to shoot golden shinsu blasts from. Her clothes were torn apart in a few places, revealing her pale skin. A drop of blood was flowing from her mouth, as she was staring at Lumen with her dark blue, nearly black, eyes. Vaspa couldn't believe that only was he able to match her speed, he was also faster than her. Not once had she managed to land even a single hit on him during their fight, while he had hit her on more than one occasion. She had the faint feeling that he wasn't even going all out against her. Lumen created a purple-like bong of shinsu, absorbed it in his left hand, and pointed it at her. Vaspa didn't know what's the deal with that and was about to jump away from her spot. Before she could do that, she felt a weird suction force coming from Lumen, and she was pulled towards him. Try as she might, she flapped her wings to escape from the weird ability, but she didn't succeed. She flew like a kite, straight towards his hand. Lumen grabbed her by the throat, and an immense pressure descended upon her. Vaspa couldn't resist and weakly fell on her knees. Barely, she lifted her head to look at him. Her eyes were filled with astonishment as she watched him smile at her. After a moment, she hung her head and admitted defeat. He was stronger, faster, and had weird abilities to go with that. Maybe if she had managed to hit him once and poisoned him, the fight would have ended differently. But she hadn't landed even a single hit on him. Never had she suffered such a defeat before. Vaspa felt shame at being defeated so easily, but she was grateful at the same time. Finding teammates that are as strong as she is not an easy task. She would be happy to join his team, knowing how strong he is. That's if he doesn't decide to kill her, that is. That was fun. I think you will a fine fit for my team. Hearing him, she brightly smiled as she transformed into her girl form. Staying in her adult form for long periods of time tired her out, and she preferred staying in her smaller form. We should also find you something else to wear, Lumen told her while looking at her shredded fur coat. Looking down, she noticed her damaged clothing. Without a shred of embarrassment, she removed the coat, revealing she only wore underwear beneath it. Throwing it on the ground, she pulled out another one from her pocket and put it on. There is no need. That's one way of dealing it with that. Lumen chuckled. Let's go and introduce you to the rest of the group. Vaspa nodded without her previous arrogance and followed after him. On the way, she asked him questions about him, trying to get to know him better. The test on the 8th floor was one that required you to take it with a team of 5. No more, no less. You need exactly 5 members to be allowed to take the test. Which is one of the reasons why Lumen sought out Vaspa. His group had 9 members, so he decided to find one more, and split it into 2 teams. In the test, you will have to face off against another team of 5, and each member will be randomly matched against another member from the opposite team. In order to pass, your team needs to win at least 3 of those matches. Killing is allowed, but if even one of your teammates dies, you will automatically fail the test. Which is what happened to Vaspa. She had easily taken care of her opponent, but one of her teammates had ended dying. Annoyed by her weak team members, she had killed off the rest. And later killed off the team that stopped her from advancing to the next floor. After that, there were very few regulars on the 7th floor, that wanted to team up with her. To top it off, all of those that wanted her to join their team were weaklings in her eyes. Knowing that Lumen and his team should be exceptionally strong for the 7th floor, she happily followed after him to meet the rest. After they got the introduction out of the way, the group had split into 2 teams. One team consisted of Andrasi, Hatsu, Lore, Alexei, and Lisu. While the rest of the group was on the other team. Looking at his teammates, Lumen couldn't help but think that they looked like one very dysfunctional family. With him and Tiana as the parents and the 3 cute girls as their kids. Who despite their looks, are small killing machines. Hey! Let's make another bet. Whoever advances to the next floor first gets a free wish from the other. Andrasi exclaimed. Without even letting Lumen respond to her, she was already urging her team to go and take the test. I knew the fearsome White Star won't shy away from a challenge. Andrasi's voice was heard from a distance away. She really wanted to get back at Lumen, since she believed he is the one that erected the wall that blocked the tunnel. He hadn't told them that Bob had interfered during their previous test and that he had killed the disgusting test director. Should I go and kill her? Vaspa asked, fully knowing that the other party is a princess of Zahard. She had trained with the group for a week and knew the capabilities of all the members. Lumen was the only one she wasn't confident of being able to kill. All the members of his team had improved during their stay on the 7th floor. Verdi had also revealed that she has a special flower, which is able to unlock the hidden potential of those that wear it. Everyone had received a boost in their strength from wearing it. Everyone except Lumen, since the flower didn't work on him for some reason. Just leave her be. Andrassy is just a sore loser. He answered her, and Vaspa nodded in response. She had accepted him as their leader and would follow his commands. Lumen's team signed up for the test, and they were shortly matched with their opponents. Each member was transported to a sealed-off room to face their opponents. Verdi's opponent was a stunning beauty with long blonde hair. The woman looked more like a supermodel than a fighter. The moment Verdi laid her eyes on her, she smiled cheerfully. "You will be a perfect match for a doll I recently got." "Happily," she exclaimed. Before the blonde woman could even comprehend Verdi's words, she got entangled by a pink tentacle. Moments later, the cute grey-haired girl had another puppet in her dollhouse. Anik's opponent was a giant of a man with 4 arms. Holding clubs in each hand, he was staring menacingly at the green-skinned girl. "Ants like you shouldn't even be trying to climb the tower. I will crush you like the bug you are." The man threatened her with an evil grin. Anik smiled in response and with a burst of speed, appeared on his shoulder. Taking a page from Tiana's book, she crushed the man's jaw, stopping him from surrendering the fight. Tearing his arms away, she beat him to death with his own limbs. It took a few minutes before his dying gurgles stopped. Vaspa's opponent's eyes widened in fear when he saw her. She was quite famous for her ruthlessness on the 7th floor. Before he could surrender, she appeared before him with a hand against his mouth. "Shhh," Vaspa told him with a finger next to her mouth and stabbed him with her poisoned needle afterward. "I promise the pain will last for only 5 minutes. Afterward, you will never experience pain again." Vaspa whispered in his ear as she continued holding his mouth. The man tried to escape her grasp, but despite her small stature, her strength was leagues higher than his. His struggles continued for exactly 5 minutes, and he weakly fell on the ground. Tiana's opponent was a bald-headed green-skinned man. A long black tongue was flowing out of his mouth, which was filled with teeth resembling that of a shark. "Ah, you look so tender. I wonder if you will taste as tasty as you look," the man said while drooling. "Of course, I will get the creepy one." Tiana shook her head in disgust. "Don't worry, sweetie. You won't find me creepy after I digest you," he replied with an evil laugh and dashed towards her. Before the green-skinned man could reach her, Tiana used a technique that she recently managed to learn, thanks to Lumen's help. Taking control of the surrounding Shinsu, she used reverse flow control and stopped the man in his tracks. Forming another bong of Shinsu, she threw it at the man's head and obliterated it in the process. Tiana has been training her Shinsu control with great intensity and had managed to learn how to control 2 bongs by now. With her potential unlocked by Verdi, she had been making great progress recently. Her talents in controlling Shinsu are exceptionally good. Very few could manage to use both the standard flow control and reverse flow control at the same time. Lumen's opponent was a tall, dark-skinned woman with a curvy body. She had long curly black hair and brown eyes. Wearing only a tight black spandex suit, you could easily imagine what's beneath it. My. If it isn't the Great White Star. You are not as handsome as they describe you, but you are a definitely pretty one. She licked her lips as she stared at Lumen. "As beautiful as you are, I don't like going out with sluts," he replied back, causing her to laugh. "Aren't you a feisty one?" The woman chuckled. "Too bad, I like my men when they are bound by my chains and submissive to me." She laughed out and formed 2 bangs of Shinsu around her, which transformed into black chains. The 2 chains shot towards Lumen, trying to bind him. But before they could reach him, he disappeared from his spot. Appearing behind her, he had already formed a purple bong in his hand. Pushing it inside her body, he watched the gravity-infused bong do its work. The sounds of a screaming woman and bones being crushed filled the room as her body started to compress itself. In less than a minute, the woman had turned into nothing but a small ball of disgusting meat. The 5 of them were teleported to another room, where a green-haired woman congratulated them for successfully passing the test. After awarding them with 5,000 points each, the test administrator teleported the group to the next floor. Once the group was gone, the woman used her pocket to contact someone. White Star's group had just advanced to the 8th floor. She received a response and answered back. Yes, the other 5 had also passed the test. They did it a few minutes earlier than his group. As soon as Lumen's group appeared on the 8th floor, he saw Andrasy staring at him with an extremely proud face, and with her hands folded under her growing bosom. I win this time. With this, both of our wishes cancel out each other. She proudly exclaimed. I don't remember agreeing to another bet with you. Lumen told her with a straight face. Andrasy's smile instantly disappeared after she heard him. No. That's not fair. You cheated on the previous bet. She started pouting like a little girl. Chapter 28, 8th floor. While Andrasy was pouting like a little girl, a man dressed in a white suit with a red tie walked over. The man had long brown hair and a curly mustache. Hello, regulars. My name is Raphael, and I'm an administrator on the 8th floor. He greeted the group with a bow. The lovely miss over here. Raphael pointed at Andrasy. Said that all of you are part of the same team. Is this correct? He questioned the group, which nodded to confirm. Lovely. Then I will register you as Andrasy's team for the 8th floor. Raphael exclaimed, and Andrasy snickered while watching Lumen mischievously. Unfortunately, she didn't get a reaction from him. With that out of the way, I will explain to you the rules of the test on the floor, Raphael told them while twirling his mustache. The 8th floor is a bit larger than the previous floors and is filled with all kinds of creatures. Your test will have something to do with those creatures, but what exactly, is still to be decided. He pulled out a crystal ball. You see, there are over 100 different types of missions that you could receive for the 8th floor. It will all depend on your luck. A member of your team just has to touch the crystal ball, and a mission will be generated for you. Raphael presented the crystal ball, waiting for someone to touch it. Andrasy boldly marched up to it. Since the team is named after me, it makes sense that I would be the one to do it. Holding back her laughter, she was glancing back at Lumen's reaction. Sadly for her, he had a blank look on his face. TSCH. Clicking her tongue, she touched the crystal ball. The crystal ball started flashing madly. Like a slot machine, the missions were appearing and disappearing, until it settled onto one. Obtain the egg of a Spinosaurus and keep it for a day. Seeing that, Lumen had a confused look on his face. Isn't that a dinosaur? He wasn't a dinosaur specialist or something like that, but that name definitely sounded like one. He didn't expect to get to see a real dinosaur, but nonetheless, that sounded exciting. Oh my! Raphael exclaimed. That's probably the toughest mission you could get. Should you have gotten a mission regarding the Tyrannosaurus rex, Giganotosaurus, or the Carcharodontosaurus, you would have had an easier time. Hearing all those names, Lumen was sure that they are all dinosaurs. The Tyrannosaurus rex is especially famous on Earth. Although all of them are extremely dangerous for F-rank regulars, you could still handle them. But the Spinosaurus is a bit different from them. Not only is it faster and stronger, but it's also the smartest one out there. On the 8th floor, the Spinosaurus is the king of the beasts. Raphael explained while showing them a picture of the beast. The Spinosaurus was a large quadruped dinosaur with a sail on his back and a long tail. Long, narrow crocodile-like head, filled with extremely sharp teeth, it could easily swallow a human with it. The beast's body was covered by scales that closely resembled feathers. Raphael was expecting the group to look scared and frightened from seeing the Spinosaurus, but everyone looked calm and collected. Not a single one had fear in their eyes. Well, it's White Star's group, so this should be expected, I suppose. Raphael thought. Lumen's face was known throughout the whole tower, so he was easily able to recognize him. Now, you will be teleported to a random location on the floor. From there, you will have to locate your mission objective and complete it. In your case, you will have to obtain the Spinosaurus egg. Once you have it with you, you just have to keep it for a day, and you will pass the test. Raphael explained to them. Well, then. Since we have your mission chosen for the test of the 8th floor, it's time to send you off, but before that, you will all be given a gift. Raphael pulled out 10 lighthouses from his pocket. Every regular will receive an E10 rank lighthouse filled with supplies to last you a month. Since we are very generous, we will even let you keep the lighthouse. He exclaimed and presented a lighthouse to everyone. Oh! And also, the time limit for your test is 1 month. If you can't complete it within that time frame, you will be teleported back here. And you will have to choose another mission, but you will not receive any further supplies from us. He smiled at the group as he teleported them away. They all arrived at what appeared to be a small hill. Surrounding them was a giant mangrove forest. You could see the pools of water that the trees were coming from, and you could smell the putrid scent of the water. Mosquitoes the size of an arm were flying around. Everyone was observing their surroundings except Andresi. She was slightly trembling with a distressed look on her face. After a moment, she let out a girlish scream. Instantly, the whole group focused their attention on her. Andresi, what happened? Lisu asked in worry, thinking that she was attacked or saw something dangerous. With fear in her eyes, she barely turned towards him and started screaming in his face. What do you mean, what happened? How am I supposed to live for a whole month here? No hot baths, no warm and comfy beds. This is pure torture. Andresi crouched down and silently started sobbing. She barely had survived the 2 days that Lumen had forced them to camp in the forest on the 3rd floor. Now she would have to stay in this environment for maybe a month. And should they fail the test, they would have to stay even longer. This was like the worst nightmare to the Princess of Zahard. Not a single one of the group tried comforting her. They gave her one last look, like looking at an idiot, and continued observing their surroundings. Lumen was thinking that this would be a suitable place for him and his group to train and increase their strength. But he also had another thought on his mind. I wonder how will dinosaurs taste? I heard they taste like high-quality chicken. But I never cooked, nor tasted one, so I might be wrong. Either way, they should be tasty. Alexei answered him. That's good. Well, then. This hill doesn't look so bad, so let's make it our base of operation for the floor. Everyone, except the distressed Andresi, followed his commands and started setting up their tents. A week passed since the group had since they came to the 8th floor. All of them had made some kind of progress in their abilities, be it small or large. Lumen had expected the dinosaurs to be strong, due to the information he knew from Earth, but they were truly something else. Those beasts lived in an area with Shinsu, and that made them a whole different kind of monster. Each dinosaur he had encountered so far could easily shatter rocks with their jaws or tear them apart with their claws. Lumen was exploring the mangrove forest with Saber when a group of 5 dinosaurs resembling velociraptors had surrounded them. Despite looking like velociraptors, those 5 were way larger than that. They were nearly the size of Saber. Before they could jump at them, he quickly fired a purple bong of Shinsu at each of them. He had been playing with his gravity powers recently and had improved his control over them. The 5 dinosaurs started floating in the air, after being shot by his bongs. It didn't cause them any damage, but they were rendered immobile while floating in the air. Without ground under their feet, they were nothing more than sitting ducks. Lumen chuckled, watching the 5 dinosaurs move their legs in the air helplessly while trying to reach him. He watched their performance a bit longer before he shot a laser at each of them. Saber was more than happy to gobble those 5 up. Her bottomless stomach easily devoured the 5 beasts that were almost as large as her. She had slightly grown, but nothing too major. She was now 4.20 m tall and 11 m long. The two continued exploring the forest for another hour while dispatching dinosaurs left and right. Lumen has been searching for a suitable beast that he could potentially tame, but he hadn't had any luck so far. He was also on the look for a Spinosaurus, but he hadn't seen the king of the beasts either. Returning back to their camp, he smelled a delicious scent. Alexei was cooking a giant T-Rex that Anik had hunted. Lumen didn't know the exact sizes of the famous dinosaur, but the ones on the 8th floor were at least 8 m tall and 16 m long. They also had extremely tough bodies, and their scales weren't easy to penetrate. One of them could easily feed them for at least a month if the black hole named Saber didn't exist. The food they received from Raphael was ration packs, and they tasted like garbage. Knowing that Alexei was a very good cook, everyone would bring whatever game they hunted to him. Dinosaurs tasted heavenly, and the group had gotten slightly addicted to the taste. Andresi was sitting to the side and looked extremely miserable. She had begged Lumen numerous times to go and find the Spinosaurus egg and end the test as soon as possible. Sadly, he rejected her every time. Had it not been for the incredibly tasty food made by Alexei, she would have gone crazy already. Another week passed by, and the group had improved yet again. Lumen, Andresi, and Anik were all training with 15x gravity at this point. Their physical strength was completely monstrous when compared to other regulars. Andresi despised training in an environment where she couldn't take a bath, but she had no choice. Watching both Anik and Lumen improve didn't sit well with her. She is a princess of Zahard. She couldn't accept others being stronger than her. Andrasi was granted the blood of the King of Tower, and despite that, she could only match Lumen in physical strength. When you include his special abilities, he is far stronger than her. That fact was eating her from the inside, but there was nothing she could do to change that. Anik was just happy to be able to keep up with Lumen's physical strength. To the green-skinned girl, he was already family. If she could keep up with him and help him out, then she would be glad. That was more than enough for her. Hatsu had improved to the point where he could train with 10x gravity on. Vaspa was the only one that was able to match him. Despite that, she was by far the fastest one in their group, not counting Lumen. Everyone else had increased to 8x gravity. Except for Lisu, he was still stuck on 6x. He was pushing himself as hard as he can, but everyone else from the group was a pure monster. Nevertheless, his main strength was his intellect, not his physical prowess. Lisu already had an understanding of the habitats of almost all the creatures on the 8th floor. Using that, he was easily able to determine the location of the Spinosaurus, since there were 4 places where all the creatures avoided. Lumen was currently on his way towards one of those locations. He didn't plan on completing the test yet, but he wanted to check out the beast. He was casually walking through the forest when he heard a monstrous roar. Picking up his pace, he reached the location from where the roar came from. Lumen saw a giant T-Rex being torn apart by an even bigger beast. At least 15m tall and 30m long, a black and red-colored dinosaur easily ripped apart the T-Rex. Looking at the sail on the back of the beast, he was sure this is a Spinosaurus. Happy with how strong the dinosaur is, he decided to tame him. The Spinosaurus looked at him and let out a roar. Lumen just smirked and started manipulating the surrounding Shinsu. He applied reverse flow control on the beast and shot a purple bong at the king of the beasts. Without being able to resist, the creature fell on the ground. Had Lumen used only one of those techniques, the Spinosaurus would have been able to resist, but he had combined both techniques, and the beast didn't stand a chance. Its beady eyes stared hatefully at Lumen. It was a beast that rampaged through the 8th floor, and no creature dared to stay in its path. It wanted to chomp on the small creature in front of it, but it couldn't move a muscle. That hateful stare slowly turned into a fearful one. The Spinosaurus is by far the apex predator on the 8th floor, but it finally met its match. The one in front of it was predator even stronger, despite his small stature compared to the beast. As much as it wanted to chomp on the small human, it knew that it stood no chance. Lumen walked up to the Spinosaurus and placed his hand on its head. He started infusing it with his Shinsu and slowly subjugated the beast. It took him a minute, but he successfully tamed it. Releasing his suppression techniques, the dinosaur could finally move his body. It slowly stood up and stared respectfully at Lumen while awaiting his commands. "What should I call you?" "How about Berserker?" Hearing its new name, the Spinosaurus let out a roar of approval. Berserker was a male one, so he didn't even bother searching for an egg. He also didn't want to end the test just yet. Lumen jumped on top of his new creature and ordered him to go towards his group's camp. Although the group was surprised for a moment, seeing Lumen on top of the Spinosaurus, they quickly understood that it was his new subjugated creature. He had complained a few times that he hadn't managed to find a good one, so they knew he was searching for a creature to tame. Nearly 2 weeks had passed, since Lumen and his team had arrived on the 8th floor. The group was currently on their way towards one of the locations where a Spinosaurus lived. Andrasi looked beyond ecstatic at the prospect of leaving this place. Her clothes were dirty, her hair was dirty, she just wanted to take a nice and hot shower. When they reached the location, they were easily able to locate the beast. They had to team up to take it down since Lumen didn't participate. He just sat to the side and observed them. Unfortunately for the group, the Spinosaurus was a male one, so they just wasted their time. Andrasi was on the verge of crying since they had to travel quite a bit to reach the other one's location. She badly wanted to leave this floor already. They had to travel for another day before they finally reached the other location. Thankfully, they had 2 more days left before the end of the test. With their teamwork, they easily took the Spinosaurus down, but finding the egg wasn't as easy as they thought. It took them nearly half a day before they finally found it. Lisu had luckily stumbled and fell down exactly where the Spinosaurus's nest was. He had hit the egg with his head, but thankfully, the tough shell didn't break. Having acquired the egg, Alexei cooked the giant dinosaur as they waited for the end of the test. Once a day passed, they were all teleported out of the mangrove forest. "Congratulations! You have successfully completed one of the... Raphael couldn't continue since Andrassy interrupted him. Shut up! Just send us to the next floor already! She screamed out. Raphael looked at her, but after he saw her appearance, he understood her plight. I'm awarding you 10,000 points for completing the hardest mission on the floor. Good luck climbing the tower, regulars. With that, they had reached the 9th floor. Quick trivia over here. 6 years in the tower equal to about 1 year outside the tower. Also, each year in the tower has 13 months. The date system was brought by Zahard and the 10 Great Warriors. If any of you talk about there being more than 10 warriors, Zahard would like to know your location. Due to the fact that everyone lives for so long, those in the tower are judged by their appearance. For example, since Lumen looks like someone in his 20s, he is considered a young adult, despite being only 21. Which is a very young age for someone in the tower. Anak, on the other hand, looks like a kid but is over 300 years old. She is considered a child due to her appearance. So even though she is over 300 years old, she is not a legal loli, laughing face. Also, racial traits, like Vaspa's wings and ability to transform into her adult form, are highly viewed by the inhabitants of the tower. Regulars usually take around 500 years to reach the top. Yuri did in 200 years and is considered a genius. The fastest recorded time is 50 years by Urek. No one knows how long Zahard and the 10 Great Warriors took to reach the top. After becoming A-rank regulars, which is after the 20th floor, some of them spend around 3 to 40 years before even taking another test. Passing the 33rd floor makes you a D-rank regular. Someone had commented that time flows differently in the 3 tower areas. But as much I searched for that, I couldn't find any confirmation on that info. If any of you know for sure, please leave a comment. Chapter 29, 9th Floor, 1. The 9th floor was a lot like the 3rd floor, in the sense that it was a small town. As the group was looking around, a woman with a spiky, blue mohawk walked up to them. She was wearing a black leather jacket, leather pants, and knee-high shoes. What up, regulars? The name's Moxie, and I'm your test administrator. She greeted them while waving her hand. Here on the 9th floor, we like playing games. Every few years, we change up the test, but it's always in the form of a board game. The current game on the floor is something we like to call sky chess. Moxie explained while pointing towards the sky. Up in the air, you could see squares that were spread out. Each was a distance away, where you had to jump quite the length to be able to reach it. Can you please hurry up? I really want to take a bath. Andrassy begged the punk-looking woman. Moxie smirked at her and deliberately started talking in slow motion. The special thing about this game is that it's played by 4 teams of 11 regulars, unlike the normal chess where you have only 2 teams. Each team starts in the middle of each side of the board. The board is 11x11 squares. She spelled out each word, letter by letter, driving the Princess of Zahard crazy. Each team has 5 pawns, a rook, bishop, knight, queen, and a king. Pawns can only move 1 space forward. Rooks can move 2 squares, either vertically or horizontally. Bishops can only move diagonally 2 spaces. Knights can move in an L shape, 2 squares forward and 1 to the side. Queens can move 3 spaces in any direction, and kings can move in any direction without limit. You can only attack enemy pieces if you are on the same square as them. Each turn a piece has to be moved. You cannot pass a turn without moving one. Each team has to have 1 player, who will choose how the pieces move. The player can be chosen by the team, but all other positions are randomly assigned before the game starts. Moxie explained the rules. Lisa raised his hand and asked a question. What if a regular can't jump to the square they are sent to? Each square was quite a distance away from another. Some regulars might not even be able to jump that distance. Well, that's not our problem, regulars. Moxie laughed out. Those are the rules, and if you can't play the game by the rules, you will have to wait until a new game is chosen, or you can go back to where you came from. Moxie pulled out 10 black cards and flicked them towards the group. Each regular gets a free room assigned to them. The card will point in the direction of your room. The moment Andrassy caught the card, she was already running towards her room. There are a few facilities on the floor, but you can go and explore them on your own. If you have any questions, I won't answer them. So good luck, regulars. Laughing out, Moxie left them by teleporting away from there. Guess we need one more regular in order to attempt the test, Liso commented. Lumen sighed, but there was nothing he could do to change the rules of the test. If he is lucky, he could find someone useful. If not, he could pick a random regular just for the test. Their group was still missing a light bearer, so it would be good if they could find a good one here. Either way, we might end up staying here for a bit. Let's go and see what this floor has to offer. Lumen told the group. Just a few minutes after they started exploring the floor, they heard a sonic boom. Before they could realize what's happening, they saw a blonde man standing in front of them. Dressed similarly to Lumen, the man was holding a silver dwarf under his arm. Almost everyone from the group was able to recognize the silver dwarf as Evan. The silver-haired ranker looked very miserable and was silently sobbing. The blonde man roughly dropped Evan on the ground. Before anyone could even react, the blonde man appeared in front of Lumen and gave him a crushing bear hug. His bones cracked from being hugged by the blonde man. Despite having his guard up, Lumen couldn't even react to the man's movements. My dude. I'm so happy to see someone from the outside world. Lumen didn't recognize him at first, but after hearing his words, he realized the man that hugged him is Urek Mazino. An irregular just like him. The group was momentarily frozen from the incredibly fast movements of the blonde man, but they quickly got out of their stupor. They were about to attack the man, and Lumen was able to sense that. Stop! Attacking him would be pointless. Urek is one of the 5 strongest people in the tower. Their attacks would only tickle him. Oh, man! I don't know why you are here, but I'm really happy to see you. Let's go somewhere more private. Just as Urek finished the sentence, the group heard another sonic boom, and the two disappeared from their spot. The whole group was puzzled about what happened. The situation was very confusing, but Lisa was the first to comprehend Urek's words. Wait, did he say outside world? As the group was pondering on those words, another person arrived. Princess Yuri looked around and didn't see either Lumen or Urek. Damn it, Urek! Why did you steal my date? The situation was getting more and more baffling by the minute. The blonde guy they just saw take their leader away was Urek Mazino? Princess Yuri had a date with Lumen? He was also pretty much confirmed to be an irregular by Urek's words as well. Bombshell after bombshell was delivered to them in such a short time. As they were trying to comprehend the situation, Urek and Lumen appeared in a remote place on the 9th floor. Little bro. I don't know why you've come to the tower, but I'm glad to see someone from the outside world. You don't have to stand on ceremony and treat me like royalty. Just treat me like your big bro. Urek told him with a satisfied smile. Sure. Whatever you say. Lumen was confused by his words. He didn't plan on treating him like royalty in the first place. Urek looked at him for a moment and uttered. You actually don't know who I am. I know you're Urek Mazino, an irregular just like me. One of the strongest people in the tower and the fastest one to climb to the top. Lumen told him all the information he knew about him. Wait, you really don't know who I am? Wow! What kind of backward place are you from, if you can't recognize the great prince of the Mazino Empire? Urek asked him with wide eyes. He comes from one of the biggest empires in the entire universe, so he didn't expect someone from the outside world not to be able to recognize him. I've never heard of that place. I'm from Earth, we don't have such an empire there. In fact, empires don't exist there. Lumen truthfully answered him. There are a few countries that could be considered empires, but he didn't think of them as ones. Earth. I've never heard of that place. Which galaxy is it from? Urek asked while scratching his chin. We call it the Milky Way. Lumen answered. He didn't expect that this would their first conversation, but it was better than nothing. I've never heard of that as well. That's odd. But you truly haven't heard of the Mazino Empire? The empire that spans over 5 galaxies. One of the biggest in the entire universe. With Yuri Mazino, the god of power and destruction, being the ruler of the empire. Urek explained his origin, expecting to see some kind of response. Never heard of it. Lumen replied. The people from Earth only speculated that there could be other intelligent beings in the universe, but they didn't have any proof for that. Damn! You really are from a backward place. Then how did you even come to the tower? Urek questioned him. Lumen hesitated for a moment, After thinking about it, he decided to tell him about his story. Well, I was promised a grand adventure by a weird man, and I was sent to the tower to have said adventure. Before he could continue, Urek stopped him. Impossible. You can't be sent to the tower. The tower has to open its doors for you. You were tricked by him. Just like how I was tricked by that bastard Phantominum. He promised the same thing to me. Now, I have to find a way to get out of this place without making trouble for my old man. Urek denied him immediately. But that's the truth. I didn't even know about the tower's existence. If it wasn't for that Loki guy that called himself an Axis, I wouldn't even be here. Hell, he was the one that gifted me my powers. Lumen didn't mind telling that to Urek since he didn't believe he could steal them away. From his first impression of him, he didn't seem like that kind of a guy. Impossible. There is absolutely no way for someone to send you into the tower. It's also impossible for him to be able to grant you your powers. Axises might be the only naturally born divine beings, but they can't grant powers to others. In fact, no divine being can grant someone powers. Otherwise, the whole universe would be filled with people like you. Urek's words made sense, but that's what happened to Lumen. If you didn't look so convinced that that's the truth, I would have killed you already for lying to me. Hearing that, Lumen didn't know what to say. That was the actual truth, and exactly what happened. But that name Loki, it sounds familiar. Urek scratched his chin with a thoughtful expression. Ah! I think I remember now. Loki is from those drifter gods. Yes, that right. Those guys are pretty famous. No one knows from where they come from, but they are a pretty strong bunch. From what I remember, they once said that the place they come from has extremely weak and stupid monkeys. They tried helping their civilization improve, but didn't have much success. Annoyed by the stupid monkeys, they started roaming around the universe and didn't have a territory for themselves. At one point, they took over a galaxy, but all the divine beings were angry at their actions. They banded together and forced them away from that galaxy. However, that's all they were able to do, just force them away. That group had incredibly strong gods amongst them like Zeus, Odin, Thor, Jupiter, Ammon, Indra, and a bunch of others. Due to their strength, the divine beings formed a pact with them. They would be allowed to roam free around the universe, as long as they do not attack the territory of other divine beings. Whenever they were asked where they came from, they would always curse how stupid and weak that place is. I heard they are a fun group when you get to know them, but I never got to meet any of them. Lumen was amazed at hearing stories about the gods that were only myths on Earth. Never would he know that all of those incredible stories would actually be true. The gods from Earth were even famous across the entire universe. That's amazing, but Loki called himself an Axis, not a god. What's the deal with that? Lumen asked Urek, trying to understand his own situation better. That shouldn't be possible. I'm 100% certain that he is a god. Although gods and Axises are both divine beings, you can't be both at the same time. You can become a god, but you can't become an Axis, you have to be born one. Urek's explanation was starting to confuse Lumen. Then how do you explain my situation? I was a normal 20-year-old human a few months ago. I had absolutely no special powers until Loki granted them to me and sent me here. Lumen asked him. It's not that he was unhappy with his powers, but he at least wanted to know more about how he received them. That? I don't know. It shouldn't be possible. As I said, no divine being can grant powers to someone else. It doesn't matter if it's a god or an Axis. That's simply impossible. Urek resolutely told him. Take me for example. Both of my parents are gods, so I inherited some of their powers. I might not be immortal like them, but my lifespan is greatly increased. I also had my powers since the moment I was born. They weren't given to me by a divine being. What you are saying just doesn't make sense. Damn. Urek started massaging his temples. I didn't expect to have this kind of conversation with you. I just wanted to ask you how my father had reacted to my disappearance. Neither did I. I just wanted to know more about the other irregulars. Can you tell me more about Phantominum and Enryu? Lumen asked, hoping to get some hints from hearing about the other two irregulars. Phantominum is a shitty, cheating, lying scum. If you meet him, never listen to a word he says. That's all you need to know about him. Enryu, on the other hand, I've never met. I don't know anything about him, other than that he killed the guardian of the 43rd floor. Which is pretty impressive. Urek's explanation didn't help him at all, but Fatamanum did sound a bit like Loki. Well, that was mighty useful. Lumen sighed. Urek thought for a moment and pulled out an alcohol beverage from his pocket. He took out 2 glasses, filled them up, and presented one to Lumen. Tell you what. You tell me about your whole life on Earth before you met Loki, and I will tell you about mine before I met Phantominum. Sounds good? Urek asked. It's better than nothing. Lumen accepted the alcohol-filled glass, and the two sat down, sharing their stories. Chapter 30, 9th Floor, 2. Princess Yuri stayed with Lumen's group for a bit. Her little niece was a part of that group, so she wanted to see how she is doing. Anik was surprisingly pleased with being in his team. Yuri was happy to hear that. She remembered how her niece was angry at the world and hated everyone the last time she saw her on the 2nd floor. This was a pleasant change in her eyes. Yuri asked his other teammates how they met and what they've been through so far. She was waiting for Lumen and Urek to come back, but things were getting out of hand at this point. She had waited for over 4 hours, and there were no signs of the two. She was at the limits of her patience. Evan, lead me to Urek and Lumen. Yuri's command, teared up Evan. The silver dwarf was always bullied by Urek, and Lumen is the reason he gets bullied by Yuri. He didn't want to see either of those two irregulars that cause him so much trouble. Yes, princess. Letting out a sigh, he started moving in the direction. He couldn't see clearly. Even though his senses of a guide couldn't see through the two irregulars, he was able to pinpoint their location. Evan could easily read the whole 9th floor, except for a single place that was sticking out like a sore thumb. With their abilities of Hin Rankers, the two were able to reach the location of the two irregulars pretty quickly. However, what they saw wasn't quite what they expected. Bottles of liquor were littered around the place, and it wasn't just any kind of alcohol. They were bottles of Fire Throat, a drink that even high rankers can't take too much of, and there were over 20 bottles on the ground. Both Lumen and Urek were holding a bottle in their hand while facing each other. Urek was laughing as he sent a punch in Lumen's direction. He didn't reinforce his attack with Shinsu, and he didn't need to. His physical strength is through the roof, and even high rankers won't dare take his punch head-on. Yet, Lumen didn't even try to dodge the attack. His body turned into a light, and Urek's punch went straight through him. Ha! I hit you. Drink. Urek laughed out, and Lumen drank from his bottle. Wait. That didn't hurt me, though. You drink. Urek's eyes widened, and he sagely noted. You're right. The blonde irregular took a drink. Now Lumen sent a punch towards Urek, and the blonde man let the attack hit him. Drink. I hit you. Lumen said, and Urek drank from his bottle. But that didn't hurt me. You drink. Lumen gasped and took a sip from his bottle. This kind of exchange continued until they both had emptied their bottles. Urek took out 2 more, handed one to Lumen, and they proceed to do the same thing. Evan and Yuri looked at each other and wondered. What the hell is going on here? Urek was having a lot of fun. He wanted to know what has happened in the outside world since he was tricked into coming to the tower. That didn't happen since Lumen had absolutely no knowledge about that, but he got to know someone from Earth. The place where those drifter gods came from. That was a pleasant surprise. Those gods are extremely famous across the universe. Coming out of nowhere, they took over one of the bigger galaxies in the universe. And there weren't just a dozen or so gods. No, there were hundreds of them, with a lot of powerhouses amongst them. Together, all of them were so strong, that every faction and power in the universe had to band together to drive them out of that galaxy. They couldn't kill them, so they had to make a contract with them, to let them roam free around the universe. The scariest part is that they all came from the same place, yet no one even knew where that is. The gods from Earth scared everyone so much that all factions in the universe made another contract. One that forbids people from entering the tower. No one wanted to see another incident with over 100 gods coming out of nowhere and taking over a galaxy again. Urek has heard a lot of stories about them, but he never got to meet one. Now, he got the chance to meet someone from Earth, and he was starting to get scared of that place. Lumen was adamant he didn't have any special powers before Loki had appeared, and Urek was sure that he is truthful. However, that meant that he had his powers for less than a year, and yet he already has a good grasp on them. That's another thing that confused him. Urek was born the child of 2 gods. That's an extremely rare event since his parents have been together for over 1,000,000 years, and he is their one and only child. Since the moment he was born, he had his abilities. Urek had spent years to learn not to crush things with his immense power. He entered the tower when he was over 200 years old, and he was already a powerhouse. Lumen is 21 years old and has had his powers for less than a year. Is everyone from Earth a monster? What the heck? Lumen was born as a normal and weak human, and received his powers, right before coming to the tower. He was starting to believe Loki did end up granting him his powers somehow, but that's just impossible. Urek thought that maybe Lumen was Loki's child, and he had locked his powers, but that didn't make any sense as well. Why wouldn't he train him from a young age? Why would he wait until now, and send him to the tower right after he received his powers? He wasn't the smartest out there, so he stopped thinking about that. He found someone similar to him, so he embraced the moment. Maybe in the future, Lumen could even help him out with escaping the tower. He could always march up to the last floor and take the challenge, but should he do that, he will face the wrath of all the factions in the universe. That would cause a lot of trouble for his father, so he was trying to find a way out of the tower without becoming a god or immortal. Yuri and Evan observed the two for some time, but the princess was starting to get annoyed. They weren't hiding their presence, but the two didn't even turn to look at them. They were just throwing punch after punch while drinking and laughing like idiots. Damn it, Urek! Why did you steal my date? Yuri yelled at Urek and sent a kick his way. He flew away but stood with only a bit of blood flowing down his mouth. Yuri might be one of the strongest people in the tower when it comes to physical abilities, but Urek is on a completely different level. And you? I came from the 77th floor just to go on a date with you. How dare you stand me up? Yuri turned towards Lumen, prepared to hit him as well, but he was already passed out, sleeping on the ground. Angered by that, she turned towards Urek. Look at what you did. Now, I can't even go on my date. She started punching and kicking him, but Urek laughed it out. You could always go on a date with me. He suggested, but Yuri shot him down. Fuck that. Who wants to go on a date with you? She continued beating him since Lumen was already sleeping. The next time Lumen opened his eyes, he was sleeping in a bed. Looking around, he was in an unfamiliar room. The last thing he remembered is drinking with Urek and sharing stories. He had no idea how he ended up in this room. Well, you are finally up. Turning to where the voice came from, he saw Evan sitting on a chair. Where am I? And why are you here? Lumen questioned the silver dwarf. He did remember seeing him when Urek arrived, but he didn't know why he is waiting for him. Evan let out a sigh. You better take a bath and get ready for your date. Confused by his words, Lumen asked him. Date? What are you talking about? Your date with Princess Yuri. She came here from the 77th floor just for you. Let me tell you, she is pretty mad at you for standing her up. Evan explained to him. He personally knew how hot-tempered the princess is. Yuri. Lumen had nearly forgotten about his date with her. It happened the moment he arrived in the tower, and that whole experience felt like a dream to him. When did I stood her up? He didn't remember such a thing happening. He didn't even remember seeing her after the first floor. Yesterday, when you went to drink with Urek, Evan told him with a frown. He wasn't the biggest fan of the two irregulars. What? I didn't even knew she was here. How did I stand up her up? That didn't make sense to him. Ha, she doesn't care about that. In her eyes, she came specifically to have her date with you, and you didn't show up. Princess Yuri had never gone a date, and she got stood up on her first one. Trust me, she isn't happy about that. You better hurry up and prepare since I already told her you are up. Evan told him with an evil smirk. Lumen got up from the bed and made his way towards the bathroom when he heard Evan from behind him. She said you have half an hour at most before she gets really angry. After getting cleaned up and putting on some clothes, Lumen exited the room. Only to find Yuri standing in front with her arms crossed under her bosom. Dressed in a white button-up shirt and a red skirt that didn't even reach her knees, exposing her long legs, she was looking at him with an angry expression. You are beautiful, but you would look so much better in a dress. Yuri's response to his compliment was to send a punch towards his face. Thankfully, she didn't reinforce it with Shinsu, so he was able to avoid it by turning into light. You've got guts complimenting me after standing me up yesterday. And what's wrong with my clothes? Yuri looked down. What she wore is considered formal wear. She thought that's appropriate for a date. Nothing's wrong with your clothes. You look good in them. I just think a dress will make you even more beautiful. Keep that in mind for our next date. Lumen winked at her. Pa. Who says I will go out with you again? I'm doing it this time because I owe you. She threw another punch at him, but it easily went through him. TSCH. This time, you're going out with me because you owe, while next time you will do it voluntarily. Let's go and see what this floor has to offer. Lumen winked at her and presented his arm to her. Yuri looked at him, wondering what is he doing. Why are you holding your arm like that? When two people go on a date, they usually link their arms. He explained to her. Oh, yet? She questioned, and he nodded in response. Yet. Yuri linked her arm with his, but she applied force, intending to punish him for standing her up. Without even letting out a sound, Lumen healed whatever damage she caused with his phoenix flames. Yuri was surprised seeing the weird white flame. It didn't burn her, nor cause her any pain. It felt pleasant and warm. It also healed his arm in an instant. So, besides his light abilities, he also has a weird flame ability that heals him. So, do you have any preferences on where you want to go? Lumen asked her. You haven't even chosen a place for us to go to? TSCH, TSCH, TSCH. This is my first time going on a date, and I'm already disappointed. Jokingly she laughed out. I still haven't explored the floor, and I didn't even know you will be coming. You could have given me a heads up. Lumen shrugged his shoulders. What? You're the one that asked for a date, I thought you would be prepared for it. Yuri teased him. I was hoping to have it right after the test on the first floor. You could have told me more about the tower, but who would have taught that I will be sent to the next floor immediately? You could have warned me about that, but you didn't say a word. Lumen replied with another shrug. I figured since you are going on your grand adventure, you would know more about the tower. Guess I gave you too much credit. Yuri responded with a smirk. The two continued on with their playful banter as they explored what the 9th floor has to offer. Without even realizing it, the two had spent the entire day while traveling between shops and restaurants. At one point, they had stopped teasing each other and started sharing stories about themselves. Yuri was interested in hearing stories about Earth, and the lifestyle of the people there. She was greatly surprised that the people there had no special powers. She thought all of them are monsters like Lumen and Urek, with weird abilities. Turns out, they are all weak humans with no power. Lumen, on the other hand, got to learn more about Yuri and her time climbing the tower. She told him how she is a part of the HA family, one of the 10 great families. How she was chosen to become a princess of Zahard due to her incredible talents and how she climbed the tower in only 200 years. The two had enjoyed talking with each other and had sat on a bench in a park. Without even realizing it, they had spent the entire night sharing stories about themselves. Their date would have continued on even longer, had it not been interrupted by Urek at the end. Chapter 31, 9th Floor, 3. Little bro. Let's go. Urek yelled out, interrupting Lumen and Yuri. Go where? What are you talking about? Lumen asked, but Urek had already grabbed him. Sorry, Yuri. I have a promise to fulfill. The blonde irregular turned towards the princess and jumped away with Lumen. Damn you, Urek. I never said that the date is over. Yuri cursed him in annoyance. Next time, wear a dress. She received a message from Lumen on her pocket. The two had exchanged their contact numbers during their date. Next time? TSCH. You don't decide if there will be a next time and what I will wear. Yuri said out loud but didn't send it as a message. Urek arrived with Lumen in a remote place on the 9th floor. Dude, you gotta teach me how you pick up girls. How did you even manage to get a date with a princess of Zahard? I've asked out all princesses, and they have all refused me. Urek complained about his misfortune with women. I got lucky. Lumen answered with a straight face. Bah. If you don't want to tell me, just say so. Urek replied with a frown. He really wanted to know how Lumen scored a date with Yuri. He's been trying to get one with a particular princess for quite some time without having any success so far. Whatever. I have a promise to fulfill, so let's get started. Urek said while cracking his knuckles. Get started with what? What promise are you talking about? Lumen had no idea what was Urek on about. You don't remember? We made a bet, if I can't hurt you with my full strength without using Shinsu, I will train you for 3 days. I punched you, but my arm went through your body. That was a nasty trick that you pulled, but you did win the bet. Lumen didn't remember making such a bet, but that must have happened after he drank too much of the alcohol that Urek gave him. Each day, I will teach you a different thing. For the first, I will teach you how to read the flow of Shinsu better. For the second, I will show you a Shinsu strengthening technique. And for the last day, I will show you a Shinsu manipulation technique. Everything that I will teach you has been shown to me by my parents. And I will teach you the way they taught me. So put this on. Urek pulled out a futuristic-looking black helmet and threw it to Lumen. The helmet will block your sight, hearing, and sense of smell. While wearing it, you will have to rely on the flow of Shinsu around you to see. That explanation sounded a lot like observation haki to Lumen. The way my father taught me is, by attacking me while I wore a helmet like that. Every time I didn't dodge his attack, he will hit me and nearly break my bones. His excuse was that if I don't feel pain, how would I know that I made a mistake? Yep, definitely like observation haki. His training was quite effective, so be prepared to face the same, Urek told him with an evil smirk. The moment Lumen put on the helmet, he felt as if he was in a void. The feeling of losing 3 of your main senses was incredibly weird. However, with the loss of 3, all others were enhanced. His brain constructed an image of his surroundings using the flow of Shinsu around him. Sadly, it was only a hazy picture since he wasn't that good at it yet. Nonetheless, he had a vague idea of where everything is around him. He was even able to see a blurred image of a man. As he was trying to get used to the feeling of using Shinsu to see, the blurry image of Urek disappeared. He had a very faint sense of where the attack would come from, but he knew he couldn't dodge on time. Knowing that, he tried to use his elemental form to let the attack go through him. Sadly, Urek had strengthened himself with Shinsu and punched him in the shoulder. With a nasty crack of bones breaking, Lumen was sent flying. Standing up, he quickly tried healing his shoulder with his phoenix flames. Lumen wasn't even able to heal his wound before he felt Urek moving. The blonde irregular was moving as fast as him when he was going at top speed. This time, he was going to kick him in the stomach area. Unfortunately, he couldn't dodge this one as well, since he sensed the attack too late. Knowing that his Logia form would be useless, he used his Foex's flames. He might not be able to avoid the attack, but he could start healing the injury as soon as it happens. This continued on, and attack after attack, he would get sent flying over and over again. After the 100th attack, he started letting some go through his body by using his elemental form and creating a hole right where the attack would hit. He was getting better at that, but that wasn't enough for him. Lumen wanted to be able to dodge his attacks. He knew he could move as fast as him, so he knew he should be able to avoid his strikes by dodging them. Without even realizing it, the surrounding image was no longer as hazy as before. He could even faintly see Urek's facial expressions. He could even anticipate some of his attacks and knew exactly where the blonde irregular would aim it. He didn't know when, but he started predicting his attacks at some point. Lumen didn't know how many times he was sent flying before he managed to dodge an attack, but he finally did it. He was barely able to move out of the way, right before he punched him. He actually avoided a hit from Urek. Little monster. It took me over a month to even dodge one of my father's hits, and he does it in a day? I'm starting to regret that I promised to teach him. The two continued the training for a few hours more before Urek stopped it. He took away the helmet, and Lumen was able to see with his eyes again. Not bad. Of course, you are nowhere near as good as I was, but you are getting there. Urek would never admit that someone is better than him. You know what? Since you are my little bro, I will let you keep the helmet. He threw it back at him, and Lumen stored it in his pocket. Meet me here tomorrow, so we can continue our training. Now, I will go and try to find some chicks to go out with. In an instant, Urek disappeared from his spot. On his way back, Lumen had closed his eyes, trying to continue his training from earlier. Seeing by reading the flow of Shinsu was a novel feeling, so he enjoyed viewing the world that way for the time being. While walking, he sensed a regular that was being chased by a bunch of other regulars. They were a distance away, but they were disturbing the flow of Shinsu, so he able to sense them. The one that was being chased was moving exactly towards Lumen's direction. As the regular got closer, he opened his eyes. In front of him was a beautiful and voluptuous woman with long red hair that reached her waist and charming red eyes. Just a head shorter than Lumen and dressed in a purple dress that stuck closely to her, he watched as she walked right next to him. Since he felt no danger from her, he didn't do anything to stop her. She stood on his right side without saying a word and turned towards her 6 pursuers. All 6 of them were wearing black cloaks. 5 of them were lined up next to each other, while one of the regulars stood in front of them, clearly the group's leader. All of them had their hoods on, so he couldn't see them with his eyes, but he was able to see them by reading the flow of Shinsu. Surprisingly, the group consisted of only women and beautiful ones at that. All of them had alluring figures that could put supermodels on earth to shame. You might be famous, but you shouldn't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. If you leave now, you might get to keep your life. Otherwise. The leader of the group hissed out with a male voice. Another trap. Lumen wasn't sure if the person used some kind of device to make her voice sound male, or if it was a male that had gone through an operation to look like a female. Are you threatening me? He laughed out. Lumen was punched around by Urek for the whole day, and no matter how much he wanted to punch him back, he couldn't do it since the blonde irregular was faster than him. Now, those 6 popped up and threatened him. They looked like the perfect targets to let out some steam. Yes. You have 10 seconds to leave this place. Hissed out the leader with a male voice. Being able to see the female figure underneath the cloak and hearing the male voice, really bothered him. Lumen formed a purple bong in his hand and threw it at the group. The 6 were able to dodge the attack and were about to jump towards Lumen and the red-haired woman next to him. However, a sudden pulling force stopped them. The purple bong that Lumen shot didn't explode, but floated in the air between all 6 of them. The group of regulars was helplessly sucked in towards the bong and fused with his gravity powers. Screams echoed out, as all 6 were slowly being ground together. In a matter of moments, there was only a giant blob of meat that was left from the 6 regulars. Lumen didn't even bother to look at them as he continued on his way towards his room. The red-haired woman followed after him and was right behind him. He stopped and turned towards her. What do you want? Lumen asked the woman. In 30 minutes, I will be attacked again. My fate tells me that as long as I am with you, nothing will happen to me. The redhead replied. Your fate? Are you a red witch? Diana had told him about that species of guides. Red witches have the ability to see the fate of people. Yes, I am a red witch. I have already completed my pilgrimage, and I'm currently climbing the tower as a regular. She truthfully answered him. And why are you so sure that I will help you? He asked her. Because my fate says so. It is my destiny to follow you right now. Unfortunately, that's all I can see when it comes to you. The redhead answered him. She is considered one of the most talented guides, but for some reason, she could barely read the fate of Lumen. She had never experienced something similar before. Ha! So you are saying that someone will definitely attack you in 30 minutes. Lumen wasn't sure what to think of that. Being able to see the future sounded so far-fetched, but also being given incredible abilities and being sent to a place like the tower, sounded just as improbable. Yes, exactly 29 minutes now, until they attack me. She confirmed with confidence. We'll see about that. Until then, what should I call you? Lumen asked. Marie. She responded. Like Marie said, exactly 29 minutes later, a group of 5 cloaked regulars arrived. They all stopped a distance away from them. With hesitance, one of them asked. Can you please step away from her? We need to capture her. If they didn't have the fug symbol on their cloaks, he would have stepped away. However, that organization had already attacked him before, so he wasn't going to let them do as they please. Without responding, he shot 5 quick lasers, killing them all, and turned towards Marie. So, what does your fate tell you now? Her eyes widened in surprise as she uttered. Nothing. Marie's vision of the future was blank. She had no idea if she would survive or die. Red witches never feared their death even when they foresee it, as that is simply their destiny. What they feared the most is not being able to see their fate and the fate of others. Her current situation was terrifying, for that matter. The only other time she had the same feeling is when going through the floor of death. Now, little lamb. Would you mind telling me why Fug is after you? Marie gulped down as she heard him and faintly nodded. Chapter 32, 9th Floor, 4. Diana had shown Lumen how traditional wave controllers handled Shinsu. Rather than forming it into bongs, they would take over an area of Shinsu and control the flow of whole battlefields. Combining that technique with his aura of an irregular, he was able to block the guide's ability to see the future. Diana had speculated that would be the case, but they weren't able to confirm it. Testing it out on Mary, Lumen now knew that her theory was correct. With her ability to see the future being blocked, Mary felt extremely uncomfortable. As much as she hated the feeling, she didn't plan on escaping. Her fate brought her to him, so there must be a reason for it. She managed to calm down a bit and started her explanation. We, the Red Witches, have a connection with Fug. Years ago, one of our elders had a prophecy about a boy that would bring great changes to the tower. In that prophecy, the elder saw a red witch that was guiding the boy. That red witch is currently in the custody of Fug. Mary was speaking about Warian, the leotard-wearing woman from the second floor, that got her eye injured by Bam. However, around a year ago, the moment I was selected to climb the tower, another elder received a different prophecy. The vision was very unclear, and the elder only knew that it had me in it, and a very bright being made of white light. Since the being was made of white light, the elder didn't even know what the being looked like. Everything else about the prophecy was shrouded in darkness. That also got the attention of Fug, and they have been after me since then, since they wanted to know who that being is. Ever since that moment, the path that I was following had changed. Fug had attempted numerous times to capture me, but following my new path, I was able to avoid them every time. My destiny simply doesn't lie with them. In the end, my path led me to you. I believe you are that being made of light that the elder saw. Mary finished her explanation. Lumen frowned, hearing that. Is there anything else about that prediction? The first prophecy sounded a lot more complete, while the second one was vague, to say the least. He wasn't sure if someone had actually been able to predict that he would come to the tower. Around a year ago, he was still on Earth. Lumen wasn't sure if he trusted what Marie had told him. He wasn't completely sold on the ability to see the future. Because if that's true, then isn't everything that will happen already set in stone? Lumen was more in the mindset that the future is weaved by the present. That the future isn't something that is already decided and unable to be changed. It is entirely dependent on the actions of those in the present, and no one should be able to predict the actions of millions or billions of different kind of beings. That's the biggest problem. Not only did the elder have a very vague prophecy, but she also died after telling everyone else what she saw. That has never happened in the history of the Red Witches. Mary answered him. Lumen narrowed his eyes, not pleased with her response. And what do you plan on doing now? Follow you until you prove if you are that being or not. Which wouldn't be easy, considering how much my sight is obscured when it comes to you. However, that is another reason why I believe you are that being. To Mary, that was the obvious thing to do. An elder had a prophecy about her with a being made of light. Lumen is able to manipulate light, and her path led her to him. She was almost certain that he is that being. All the signs were pointing in his direction, she just couldn't confirm if he was the one, due to the way he was controlling the Shinsu in the area. I really don't trust you. Lumen told her. Mary could always be a member of Fug. She did say that the Red Witches have a connection with that organization. This could all be a ploy to get her in his group so that she could easily sabotage him. You don't need to. Just allow me to follow you, and you could ask about my advice whenever you need it. You don't even have to listen to me, but you could always take my words into consideration. I'm a guide after all, and I take pride in my abilities. You are a unique case, and I can't see anything about you, but I could always be useful in seeing the fates of others. Mary replied. Lumen know how his team needs another member for the test on the floor. He decided to give her a chance. Depending on how she performs, he will either dispose of her or let her stay on his team. She might end up being useful in the future. How good are as a light bearer? He asked her. Light bearer? I'm average, but my skill lay in being a guide. Marie answered him. Average isn't good enough. From now on, start working on your light bearer skills if you want to follow me. At the very least, you should be able to do both positions at a high level if you want to be a part of my team. Mary was stunned, hearing him. A team of regular would be extremely happy if a guide is willing to join them, but this guy was telling her that being just a guide isn't good enough. She also has to take on the role of a light bearer and has to be good at it as well. That was not what she expected from meeting him, but she was willing to put up with it. At least until she has confirmed whether he is the being that she is meant to follow or not. Lumen turned around and continued going towards Lisa's room. His teammates had already gathered there and informed him about that. Mary quietly followed after him without saying a word. Once he entered inside, all eyes were on him. They didn't even pay attention to the red-haired beauty that entered after him. Silence filled the room, and no one dared to say a thing. "Why didn't you tell us you are an irregular?" Andrassy was the first one to break the ice with a straightforward question. "Because you never asked me." Lumen already knew that he was exposed as an irregular thanks to Urek. Lisu is smart, so he was definitely going to piece it together. "What?" Andrassy exclaimed. That wasn't the answer she was expecting. "You were going to tell us if we had asked you?" she asked in wonder. Andrassy believed that he will definitely keep it a secret. "No." Lumen simply replied. Andrassy just wanted to punch him in the face, but calmed down and asked him. "Why? Do you not trust us? Even if I did tell you, it would make no difference." Lumen also didn't trust them completely, but didn't say that and kept it for himself. "Me being an irregular or not doesn't change a thing, but do make sure not to spread that information. Now, let's focus on our new teammate for the time being," he said and pointed towards the red-haired beauty. "That's Marie, and she is a guide. She will join our team for the duration of the 9th floor. Depending on her performance, she might end up being a permanent member." Lumen introduced her to everyone else. The whole group sat down and started discussing how they would handle the sky chess game. With Marie in the team, they had a pretty good understanding of how they would deal with the test. Lumen left Lisa's room and made his way towards his own. After taking a quick shower, he was prepared to go and grab something to eat when someone knocked on his door. Opening the door, he saw Yuri there dressed in a black dress that stuck tightly to her body. For a moment, he was mesmerized by how beautiful she looked before she sent a punch his way. "Who told you, you could stare?" Yuri felt uncomfortable wearing a dress. It didn't allow her the same set of movements as her normal clothes do. She was also self-conscious about wearing a dress and had questioned herself over 100 times already how she looks. Normally, she wouldn't even care how she is dressed or how others perceive her, but Lumen's comment about how she would look even more beautiful in a dress stuck to her. Yuri felt giddy and happy when she saw how stunned Lumen was after seeing her, but she didn't tell him that. "Come on, let's go. We still haven't finished our date." She pulled him out of his room and linked her arm with his voluntarily. "You still haven't told me how the story about Naruto ended." With her physical strength, Yuri dragged him around the town, until they found a remote place where they could sit down. Without even realizing it, the two had spent another night just talking with each other. Lumen had even forgotten about his promise with Urek until the blonde irregular interrupted them. "Again!" Urek exclaimed as he saw them. He grabbed Lumen and disappeared with a sonic boom. "Dude, be honest with me. How did you get another date? You have to tell me. I'm your big bro." Urek told him with puppy eyes. He is a prince of one of the greatest empires in the universe, and he can't score a date with a single princess of Zahard, but his little bro got 2 in 2 days. He was actually jealous of him, and that's the first time he had ever experienced that feeling. "I already told you. I got lucky." Lumen answered him truthfully. Had he not made that bet with her on the first floor, this would have never happened. "That can't be. You have to have some other advice, right?" Urek asked him with hope. "Other than being yourself, there's nothing else I can tell you." Lumen replied. "But I am being myself, and they don't want to go out with me. Am I simply too great for them? That must be it." Urek came to his own conclusion. "Whatever, we will talk about this later. Now, let's get started with your training. Today, I will show you the Mazino strengthening technique and how to increase your physical strength using it." Urek started teaching him how to infuse his body with Shinsu, in order to permanently strengthen it. The most important part of that technique is the existence of Shinsu. Should Lumen attempt to train with it on Earth, he would have absolutely no success. However, that doesn't mean that it's impossible to train with that technique outside of the tower. Urek had learned it on his own home planet after all. Shinsu does exist outside the tower, but the highest concentration of Shinsu could be found in the tower. So then why was there no Shinsu on Earth? Urek had only one answer for that. The guardian spirit of the planet has died. Every planet in the universe is like a floor from the tower. Each planet gets born with a guardian spirit that infuses the planet with Shinsu. Like in the tower, you have to make a contract with that guardian if you wish to manipulate the Shinsu created by it. Only divine beings and their offsprings don't follow that rule. Every planet that Urek had visited in his life had Shinsu in the atmosphere, but his father has told him stories about planets that had their guardian spirit killed. Usually, they would slowly start crumbling away, and all life dies off shortly after the death of the guardian spirit. Well, it takes around 10,000 years, but that's a short amount of time for a divine being. By the end of their training, Urek was looking at Lumen with a complicated expression on his face. In a day, he got the hang of the technique and had some success with it. While it took Urek over a month to get it to the same level. Well, your level could be considered passable. It took me 1/10 of your time to master the technique, but you could improve in the future. Don't be disappointed since not everyone is as great as me. Just because Lumen learned it faster than him, didn't mean that he has to tell him that. It's not like anyone would know about that. Urek walked up to him and put his hand over Lumen's shoulder. So, bro. I'm teaching you my family techniques. Are you sure you can't give me some tips on scoring a date with a princess of Zahard? Come on, I'm your big bro, after all. Urek was dead set on pestering Lumen until he learns his secrets. Chapter 33, 9th Floor, 5. It's been a month since Lumen and his group arrived on the 9th floor. They were currently preparing to take on the test. Urek and Yuri had left about 2 weeks ago, but Lumen delayed them a bit with taking on the test. He wanted to get more experienced with the techniques Urek showed him. As simple as they were all incredible in their own way, and his strength had increased a lot after he learned them. The Shinsu's strengthening specifically worked wonders for him. It had unlimited potential as long as you have Shinsu to work with. Lumen's physical strength had soared greatly after practicing it. The technique has a total of 7 levels, and Lumen was only on the first one. Despite that, he could easily train with 20x gravity on him now, and Anik and Andrasi, who were able to keep up with him in that regard, had been left behind. Lumen has had numerous spars with them during that 1 month, and he had fought them each time with the helmet that Urek gave him on. He could easily distinguish people by just reading the flow of Shinsu around them, so he had no trouble fighting them while wearing the helmet. They were more than surprised when they learned that he can't see or hear a thing while having it on. Ever since he started practicing that technique, his vision of the world had changed. Being able to see how the Shinsu flowed around everything, changed the way he saw the things around him. It felt like he was looking at a whole new world, with colors that he has never seen before. Lumen could more accurately judge people's character and words, just by the way Shinsu moves around them. It worked in a similar manner to empathy, and he could understand other people's emotions. Which is why he was able to trust Marie more after being in contact with her for a month. She didn't have any malicious intent as far he could tell. He had his doubts about someone being able to see the future before, but after being shown this way of seeing things, that was starting to change. The more he was in contact with Shinsu, the more he started believing in the phrase, Shinsu has no limits. The mysterious power simply had unlimited potential. Urek was more than surprised when he learned he is capable of feeling the emotions of those around him. According to the blonde irregular, people usually develop this technique in a manner that suited them the most, and that normally happens after years of training. Urek, for example, can't sense the emotions of others but could predict the movements of others minutes before they happen. His Shinsu control had also increased after Urek showed him his way of manipulating Shinsu. Unlike Diana, whose style was more gentle, his style took a more forceful approach. Rather than guiding the Shinsu in a particular way, he would completely seize the surrounding Shinsu and force it to act in the way that he desires. Something Lumen had been trying to emulate but had little success before being shown this technique. Urek said that the way Diana taught him how to control Shinsu, greatly resembled the way one of his best friends, Beck Ryan, does it. Beck Ryan is the current head of the Walhike Song, CO founded by him and Urek, and he is considered as one of the most gifted wave controllers in the tower's history. Both styles had their pros and cons, and Lumen was trying to combine the two into his own personal style. He hasn't had much success so far, but he had a goal to work towards. He believed that it's only a matter of time before he manages to combine the two into his own personal style. Lumen hadn't taught any of his team members the techniques that Urek showed him since he promised the blonde irregular not do so. Those are his family techniques, so he won't go around spreading them. Nonetheless, his team had also improved during their stay, thanks to Yuri and Evan. The two rankers had helped them out during their visit to the 9th floor. Yuri had especially spent a lot of time with Anik and Andrasi, showing them a thing or two. She was quite fond of the two princesses of Zahard. Evan, on the other hand, was interested in Lisua and Mary. The silver dwarf had hit it off with Lisua from the start. The two constantly get bullied by their friends, so they got along while sharing their plights. With Marie, it was a bit of a different story. They were both guides that had already completed their pilgrimage. They mostly shared stories about their journeys, and he gave her tips by telling her about his own climb to the top of the tower. He was the personal guide of a princess of Zahard, so he believed that would be useful to her, considering her teammates. Mary knew that Lumen was strong, considering how famous he got for being only an F-rank regular, but she was more than impressed when she personally saw how strong he actually is. His words that her being just a guide isn't enough were extremely arrogant in her ears. However, after she saw the rest of his teammates, that changed. Every single member of his team could easily take on at least 2 positions. Even their weakest member, Lisu, is stronger than any other regular on the 9th floor. That was astonishing, considering they've all started to climb together less than a year ago. This was a group full of monster-level talents and would become a force to be reckoned with in the future. Other teams would be more than happy to have a guide, while to them, that's just a bonus. With or without a guide, they could just as easily climb the tower, it just might take them a bit longer to do it without one. Mary knew that if she wanted to follow Lumen, she would have to pick up her slack and become a good lie-bearer. Otherwise, she would be left behind. Unfortunately for Lumen, he never got another date with Yuri during her stay on the 9th floor. Since according to her, their first one hadn't ended until the day she left. Every time they went out, she would adamantly state that they are just continuing their previous one. That didn't matter to him since he simply enjoyed spending time with her. Her personality was straightforward, and he liked that about her. The fact that she was beyond gorgeous, especially when wearing a dress that is sticking tightly to her body, showing off all of her curves, helped as well. She was by far the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Lumen got to hear about her own climb to the top and had an even better understanding of the tower now. She also showed him her own personal techniques, which he was able to learn from. Not as much as the ones shown by Urek since they were lacking compared to his, but he was grateful for her gesture. Yuri's initial plan was to meet Lumen for her promised date with him and then leave to deal with her own problems. However, when she realized how much she liked spending time with him, her visit was extended by a couple weeks. Each day, she would look forward to when the two would go out together. Yuri had been complimented on her beauty numerous times during her life. However, when Lumen did it, it just felt different to her. She would giggle like a little girl and usually punch him since she didn't know how to respond to his compliments. Nevertheless, she enjoyed hearing them. Staying with him, she felt like a woman for the first time, and not like a princess of Zahard, an object meant to be glorified by everyone in the tower. And that was a nice change of pace, another reason she liked spending time with him. Yuri was very happy that she accepted his bed on the 1st floor. Had she not, this would have never happened. She was fortunate that she was able to meet him just as he entered the tower. Lumen would never forget the parting gift he received from Yuri, and what she told him the day she left. "You better climb higher if you want your second date with me. And don't make me wait too long, okay? Otherwise, I would come to find you and discipline you on how to treat a lady." The higher he climbed, the more reasons he was given to climb even higher. He didn't know what Loki was planning or why he sent him in the tower, but he was grateful for being given the opportunity. As the test on the 9th floor began, Lumen's team selected their player, and Mary was given that position. Since she is a guide and the weakest member of the team, she was the best fit for that position. With that out of the way, they were all randomly assigned their roles for the sky chess. Alexei, Lore, Lisu, Diana, and Verdi were pawns. Lumen was the rook, Hatsu got knight, Vaspa was the bishop, Andrasi got queen, and finally, Anik was the king. With their roles taken care of, they started the test. Each team had their pawns in the front, with the rest of the pieces were lined behind them. The rook was on the outer left side, the queen was on his right side, the king was in the middle with the bishop to his right, and the knight was on the outer right side. In order for a team to win, all other kings and queens have to be eliminated from the opposing teams. Each team was separated into 4 colors, yellow, red, green, and blue. The yellow team was the first to make a move, and they were positioned on the left side of Lumen's, which was the blue one and the last to move. A tricky part about this test is, that even if a team moves a piece to a square where there is another piece from a different team, the two would have to fight it out to decide who would be eliminated. However, the game won't stop for them, and another team could send their own piece to that square as well. While the three other teams were trying to make sure their queens and kings are in a safe position, Marie was seemingly moving Lumen's team in a random manner. She would send a piece where it would seem to be in a useless spot, only to end up taking out an important piece 3 turns later. Her ability to see the fate of others was extremely handy in a situation like this one. Mary would predict how the other teams would move their pieces and prepare in advance for their moves. She was perfectly able to decide what would be the best move for all pieces on her team. Her erratic movements had put the other 3 teams in a situation where all of their queens had to fight on the same square in the middle, where she was able to send Lumen to take care of all 3. While in the meantime, she was able to trap all other kings and eliminate them 6 turns later with the rest of the group. Her strategic skills weren't the best, but her ability to see the future made them look exceptional. Nonetheless, she did an amazing job as the player and handed the win to Lumen's team on a silver platter. All in all, in less than 30 turns, Mary was able to win the Sky Chess with Lumen's team. A game, which usually goes for hours before a winner is decided, was finished in half an hour, all thanks to her abilities. Moxie, the test administrator, was more than impressed with their performance since no other team has managed to complete the test as quickly as they did. Lumen's team was strong enough to pass the test even without her help, but it would have taken them longer to do so. However, due to her ability as a guide, they were able to complete it in a very fast manner. "I hope I didn't disappoint you and that you will allow me to follow you," Marie told Lumen as the test finished. She was sure that he is the being in that prophecy, so she wanted to be a part of his team. That was her fate, after all. "As long as you don't slow us down, you can have a spot on my team." Knowing that she is sincere, Lumen didn't mind her joining. She has been trying her hardest to improve her skills as a light bearer while also training alongside his teammates. "I'm grateful for giving me this chance. I promise I will do my best to keep up with you. As hard as that might be," Mary replied, fully knowing how hard it will be to keep up with his team. After Moxie congratulated them and gifted them 9000 points, she sent them off to the 10th floor, also known as the Labyrinth floor. Creator's thoughts. Gunner runner. So, I spend like 2 hours drawing the board, the pieces, moving them along, and writing down the movements. I thought I was doing something fun and all, but when I was done with everything, I had over 3000 words of just moves. Showed it to a friend, and he immediately shot it down saying it's boring, so I had to scrap it and just summarized it all. Chapter 34, 10th floor. Arriving at the 10th floor, they were greeted by a chubby-looking man. He was wearing brown leather pants and a jacket with a white shirt underneath. On his head, he wore a monocle and an archaeologist brown hat, and he carried a cane in his hand. "Greetings, regulars. I'm the ruler of the 10th floor. Howard is my name, and puzzles are my game. Ho ho ho." He laughed out while hitting the ground with his cane. "The test for my floor is a simple one." Howard twirled the cane in his hand and pointed it at a gigantic black cube in the distance. "See that beauty over there? That's my own personal labyrinth. It's amazing, right?" Howard told them with a pleased smile on his face. "I wouldn't call that a beauty," Andrassy muttered, but Howard acted as he hadn't heard her. "I've spent hundreds of years, perfecting it and making it as hard as possible. It's separated into 10 different levels, all filled with various traps. All of those levels are connected in some way, shape, or form so you could easily move through them as long as you know the path. Once your test starts, you will be sent to a random location in the labyrinth. All you have to do is escape from it. There is only one exit in the labyrinth, and it randomly changes at certain time intervals. Pretty cool, right? Ho ho ho." Howard explained the rules with a hearty laugh. "So, regulars. Are you prepared to take on my test, or would you like to go back to where you came from?" Adjusting his monocle, he asked them. Lumen's group confirmed, and Howard looked pleased hearing that. "Great. Then, I wish too many of you don't die inside my masterpiece. Good luck, regulars." Before they knew it, they were all transported to a dark place, surrounded by walls on their left and right sides. As soon as they were inside the labyrinth, they heard a dying scream echoing out. "What a way to start this off." Lisa sighed to the side. "Well, Mary, this looks like your time to shine," Lumen told her, and she stepped up to lead the group. As the guide and light bearer, she is the most suitable for that position inside the labyrinth. "Trust me, I will find the exit as quickly as possible," Mary confidently stated and had already used her lighthouse to illuminate the darkness. Already having picked up the general direction that the exit is, she started marching towards it. After passing by a few turns, she stopped the group. Stick to the wall on the right side here, there is a lava trap in the middle of the path. Mary was the first to pass by, and everyone else followed after her. She stopped in place and told them. After this point, there is a trap on the wall. We have to move to the other side. She jumped to the left side of the wall, and everyone followed suit. Massive spinning blades appeared on the right side wall, just as they switched to the left one. Whenever the group encountered more than one path, Mary would confidently pick one without any hesitation. Mary led the past quite a few traps before they reached a tunnel going up. However, there was no ladder for someone to use to go up, rather there were small platforms, where one would have to jump to climb higher. They had to go through numerous traps, while they were traversing the levels of the labyrinth. They seemed to have started somewhere near the bottom, as they had already climbed up 4 levels. With Mary leading the way, they weren't caught in a single one of the labyrinth's traps. Something's not right here, Mary said as they reached the next level. There was something off about the current level, and for some reason, she couldn't see what it is. I can feel it too. Lumen also felt something off about the current level. The place felt darker than even the previous levels, and that didn't sit well with him. There was something weird about the darkness. He didn't know if this is part of the test or not, but he had a bad feeling about it. Mary continued leading the group, but her confidence had dropped down, and she seemed a lot more hesitant than before. She will take a minute or two, just to decide which path to take. She also almost missed a couple of traps and detected them at the very last second. They were currently waiting for her to decide between 3 different paths when Lumen suddenly turned his head to the side. He felt a malicious intent from that place, but he wasn't able to see anything there. Nonetheless, he was sure that there is something or someone there. Reading the flow of Shinsu, he was barely able to perceive a figure in the darkness. Quite perceptive, to be able to sense me in my domain. A voice came from that direction, as the group saw a yellow-eyed man in a scaled armor walk out of the darkness. Dressed in a black and red cloak with a white robe underneath, he stepped up with confidence. "Who are you?" Lumen asked as he narrowed his eyes. The person in front of him felt extremely dangerous, and he could feel the killing intent oozing out of him. "I'm Caraka, a Fug Slayer, and your worst enemy. The elders want you to either join us or die, but I already made that choice for you." Caraka replied, and in an instant, formed a black-colored bong in his hand. "Die." Caraka sent the black-colored bong towards Lumen, but he was already prepared for that. Transforming into his element form, he dodged the blast of Shinsu and appeared next to Caraka in a burst of speed. The armored man's bong exploded in the back and created a wall of darkness that blocked the rest of his team. Strengthening his leg with Shinsu, he sent a kick towards Caraka's head. The armored man, surprised by how fast Lumen was, wasn't able to avoid the attack. Unfortunately, his armor wasn't just for show, and when Lumen kicked it, he felt like he hit an unbreakable barrier. Nevertheless, Caraka was sent flying into the labyrinth's walls and made a human-shaped hole. Being able to sense his presence there, Lumen charged up a massive light beam and shot it in the hole. Despite that, he was still able to sense the presence of the armored man. Leaving the human-shaped hole, Caraka didn't even have a scratch on his scaled armor. "That's a nice spell you got there. Too bad, my armor is spell protected. As much as I would love to play with you, I'm working under a time constraint," Caraka said with an evil glint in his eyes. Seeing Lumen in his element form, he smiled in a sinister way. "Did you know that darkness is the absence of light? Let's see how you will deal with that." Caraka style, World of Darkness. Big black orbs started appearing and revolving around Caraka. In response, Lumen had created his own technique and created his miniature sun. Light beams were being constantly shot towards Caraka and the black orbs, but each laser was easily absorbed in the black orbs, without causing them any damage. Seeing the lack of success with his light beams, he shot the miniature sun towards Caraka, while avoiding his black orbs. Despite knowing how dangerous it would be to detonate his technique in a closed environment, he had little choice in that matter. Sadly, before the explosion could fully form, the miniature sun was surrounded by Caraka's black orbs, and they easily absorbed the mini supernova. Lumen shot a few bongs infused with his gravity powers, but they had no effect on Caraka. His armor was easily able to negate those attacks. Resisting is futile. Your fate has been decided. Black Goral's Horn Whip. From the black orbs, whips made of pure darkness shot out towards Lumen. Caraka had created so many of them and sent them in such a way, that Lumen couldn't avoid them. 4 of those whips made of darkness pierced through him. For 2 of those, he managed to make a hole in his element form and let them through, but the other 2 pierced his lung and shoulder. Lumen jumped away from the whips and started healing his body with his phoenix flames. You are full of surprises, aren't you? Why don't you take back all of your surprises then? Damage counter, Reign of Darkness. One of his black orbs flew to his hand and greatly swelled in size. In a moment, it was as large as Caraka. The technique converts all the accumulated damage absorbed by Caraka's black orbs into one, and he shot it towards Lumen. The Shinsu blast encompassed the whole tunnel, so he wasn't able to avoid it and was hit by it. Despite that massive blast of Shinsu hitting him straight on, Lumen was still left standing. His clothes were nearly destroyed, his body was bloodied up, but his phoenix flames were working their magic and restoring it. Although surprised that Lumen survived that, he didn't give him a chance to recover. More whips of darkness came out of his black orbs and pierced Lumen through all sides. In his injured state, he wasn't able to avoid them. Looking like a porcupine, he couldn't move an inch, with all of the black whips piercing his body. 2 armored tentacles came out of his armor and stabbed Lumen in the heart and stomach. Caraka, using his armored tentacles, brought Lumen in front of him. As I said, resistance is futile. Fuck you. Lumen cursed out and spat on his face. His body was bleeding all over, his heart was pierced, and he knew that he didn't have a chance against the armored man. As much as he wanted to crush Caraka, he knew that he didn't have the strength nor the time to do it. His phoenix flames were trying their best to heal up his body, but without his heart, he wouldn't survive for much longer. Caraka, unfazed from being spat on, created another tentacle from his armor and stabbed Lumen in the head. Seeing the tentacle flying towards him, time slowed down for Lumen, and he felt something snap within him before everything turned black, as he lost consciousness. Just as the tentacle pierced him, his whole body burst into massive white flames. The phoenix flames that have always been warm and gentle suddenly turned extremely hot and destructive. The armor that Lumen couldn't break nor pierce through, slowly started melting and forming a small metallic orb on the ground. Caraka, surprised and scared from those white flames, tried detaching his tentacles, but the flames had already latched onto him. Try as he might, he couldn't remove those scorching white flames, no matter what he did. He couldn't believe that Lumen had such a suicidal technique up his arsenal. He should have expected it, considering he has similar techniques he likes to use, but that's due to him being able to revive himself. Caraka didn't think someone else would work on suicidal techniques. As he was trying to separate himself from Lumen's flames, he lost concentration, and the veil of darkness that was blocking the rest of Lumen's team was dissolved due to that. The first thing they all saw Caraka being burned alive by fiery white flames. They could all feel the heat emanating from the white flames, and they saw how helpless Caraka looked while trying to stop them. However, they couldn't see a sign of Lumen, and that frightened them. Slowly but surely, the armored man was being burned alive. With each second, more of his armor would melt off and drop on the metallic-looking ball on the ground. He tried using his black orbs to absorb the annoying flames, but even they were burned up by the scorching fire, melting into a black liquid that dripped onto the metallic ball. Seemingly, nothing could stop the fire that had engulfed him. Caraka, knowing that he can't do anything about the white flames, turned towards the group. With an evil glare, he sent off 5 bongs of Shinsu, aiming to kill a few of those regulars. However, the Shinsu blast only managed to severely injure them. If his heart wasn't hidden away in his own dimension, he would have died on the 10th floor, by someone who had just entered the tower. Thankfully, he had managed to kill that person, so he won't cause him any trouble in the future. Caraka would have preferred to have been able to kill a few of those regulars that witnessed this, but he will surely meet them in the future and end them. Now, he would have to reconstruct his body anew. Within a moment, Caraka had completely disintegrated, and there were no signs of him or Lumen left. Except for the small metallic-looking ball on the ground, that was formed from his melted armor and black orbs. What is going on here? A booming voice echoed out as Howard appeared in the labyrinth. Looking around, he noticed the destruction caused to his masterpiece, and that angered him greatly. Chapter 35, 21st Floor, 1. Hatsu, standing only on his left leg, since the other one was missing from the knee down, was wide-eyed as he stared at where Caraka disappeared. Lumen was the strongest regular he had seen. Princesses of Zahard would have to struggle to be able to compete with him. He could move faster than most people could perceive and had all kinds of weird abilities. Hatsu had never even come close to beating him during their few spars. In his mind, Lumen was someone he would have never even imagined losing, let alone dying. That didn't seem possible in his mind. Lisu had a hole in his stomach and couldn't even comprehend what's happening. Lumen was one of the few that gave him a chance to prove himself. He, like Hatsu, thought of Lumen as an invincible figure. He had never seen him come close to losing even once. Lisu had wanted to ask him about the outside world at some point, but now he couldn't do it anymore. Alexei and Lore were in the same situation. They had seen Lumen do amazing feats, but him dying had never even crossed their minds. They knew that some of them might die during their climb, but they never thought that would be him. That just didn't seem likely to them. Verdi was trembling as tears dropped from eyes. Lumen was nice to her, he would go around with her and find new dolls with her. He was her big brother, and she loved him dearly for putting up with her antics. Very few would be okay with her actions, and she knew that, but he allowed her to go loose. She was eccentric, and she understood that, but he had accepted her despite that. Now her big brother is gone, and she couldn't even avenge him. She squeezed the octopus in her hands tightly as tears kept pouring out of her eyes. Tiana's left side of the face was completely ruined as she silently sobbed. Lumen was the only one to give her a chance when she was at her lowest. He helped her improve herself and allowed her to turn her life around. He gave her hope for the future. She couldn't deny that she had a crush on him for that, but Lumen was like a bright shining star that she could only look up to, but never have. He was illuminating the night sky while she was on the ground, only being able to stare at him from a distance. Now, that star has fallen down, and she would never get to see it again. Clutching her fists, she continued silently sobbing. Vaspa had her bee-wings shredded to pieces, and she was dejectedly looking at an empty space. Lumen was the strongest and faster regular she had ever seen. She was attracted to him like a moth to a flame. The man that she admired and was trying her hardest to catch up to had disappeared. She couldn't believe it, and she didn't want to believe it. Andrassy just couldn't understand what happened. Lumen had died? That didn't make sense to her. He had even toyed with her, a princess of Zahard, how could he die to a stupid Fug Slayer? She couldn't accept that. She might have disliked Lumen in the beginning, but with time, she grew to respect him. Andrassy recognized his strength, and she had grown fond of him. She loved bickering with him, but she just wanted to get a reaction out of him. She never meant him any harm. When she learned that he is an irregular, she was sure that he'll easily reach the top of the tower. It didn't make sense for him to die here. In the end, even she dropped a few tears for him. However, Anik took it the hardest. She didn't hear the ruler of the 10th floor, nor did she perceive the pain from her missing right arm. She was staring lifelessly at where the white flames last burned. With tears in her eyes, she was trembling as she couldn't believe that Lumen was gone. He was one of the few that helped her and treated her fairly. Lumen gave her a chance to improve, and with that, he also gave her the chance to seek her vengeance. The more time Anik spent with him, the more she taught of him as family and as someone to look up to. And yet, another one of her family members was killed without her being able to do a thing about it. Was everything she cared about meant to be taken away from her? Marie was the only exception to the group. While everyone else was overwhelmed, she calmly explained what happened to Howard. She told him how a Fug Slayer had attacked them and caused the destruction to the labyrinth. Hearing her explanation, Howard shook his head. He couldn't believe that a Slayer would appear on his floor, but he didn't think the regulars could destroy his masterpiece in such a manner. He knew they weren't at fault for what happened. With a sigh, he left, noting down that he has to repair this part of the labyrinth. Marie walked up to where the white flame last burned and crouched down. Seeing the metallic-looking orb on the ground, she tried picking it up, but her hand got burned the moment she touched it. Using her lighthouse, she was able to pick up the orb and store it inside the lighthouse. He's not dead. Calmly, Marie told the rest of the group. She could feel a faint presence inside the metallic orb, but she couldn't perceive it fully. Something was blocking her sight as a guide, and that assured her that's most likely Lumen. She had no doubt that he had survived. Hearing her, they all snapped out of their trance and turned to look at her. As much as they hoped that to be the case, they couldn't believe her that easily. Anik was venomously staring at Marie with killing intent flowing out of her. If this is some kind of joke, I will slowly tear you limb from limb. Marie shook her head, showed them the metallic orb in her lighthouse, and explained her reasoning. I can sense his presence from the orb. I don't know how or why, but he is definitely still alive. He is not dead. They couldn't believe that Lumen had survived and turned into that orb, but this at least gave them some hope. As impossible as it sounded to them, they at least had some faith to latch onto. After patching up the wounded, Marie led the team through the labyrinth and quickly found the exit. Without anything blocking her sight, she was easily able to achieve that. With that, they successfully passed the 10th floor and advanced to the 11th floor, where they spend the following year, licking their wounds and learning how to fight with their injuries. They had hoped that Lumen would somehow appear out of nowhere or exit the weird metallic orb, but no such thing occurred. Nevertheless, Mary was adamant that he is alive and that she could feel his presence. That's what kept them going. Getting used to fighting without an arm or a leg wasn't an easy thing, especially when you were used to having those limbs. Anak, Hatsu, and Vaspa's strength had drastically dropped with the loss of their limbs. Hatsu had to learn how to move around with only one leg until they managed to find him a prosthetic. He had to change his whole fighting style due to the loss of balance, and he could no longer move as fast as before. Hatsu had to develop a whole new sword style for himself. Anak had to learn how to fight with only one arm. Her balance was a bit off, but not as bad as Hatsu's. Thankfully, she had her monstrous strength to lean onto. Nevertheless, her fighting prowess have been weakened. Vaspa had lost her wings and couldn't move as fast as before. She couldn't even transform into her adult form anymore since she would experience tremendous pain from her shredded wings in that form. With the loss of her biggest strength, she had to learn how to rely on her poison and technique more. Lisu had to recover for over 4 months before the hole in his stomach had healed. He still couldn't move like before and had to take things slowly. Tiana, on the other hand, had lost the sight of her left eye. It had completely turned into paste, and she couldn't see a thing from it. With the left side of her face completely ruined, she had trouble speaking, eating, and even breathing. Ever since that incident, she had completely stopped talking. They had all somehow recovered, and once everyone was ready, they slowly restarted their climb of the tower. No longer were they able to rush past tests without difficulty. Now, they had to take it at a slower pace, ensuring that they could pass each one successfully without losing a single member. Test after test, floor after floor, they had to through many hardships while climbing the tower in their current state. There were numerous occasions where one of them had nearly died, but they pushed through. Not a single member was left behind as they slowly climbed higher. A year had passed since they left the 11th floor, and they had reached the 16th floor. The metallic orb had cooled down at this point, and no longer burned those who touch it. Now, it had a nice and gentle warmth to it. The group would usually take turns to watch over it, but it was mostly occupied by Anak and Verdi. The two had made sure that the orb would never leave their sights. During that time, it had also grown slightly in size. Another 6 months passed, and they had managed to reach the 20th floor. This floor is also known as the Needle Hole to Heaven, as the 20th floor has a massive increase in difficulty. More than 50% of the regulars that reach it, never get to pass to the next one. From here on, regulars could be found living on the floors. Those who find it too hard to climb higher would usually end up staying on the highest floor they could reach. They would live their daily lives, by doing basic jobs on the floor that they are at. The metallic orb had again grown in size a bit, but nothing else had happened to it. At first, they had thought that Lumen might appear from it, but no such thing happened. Their hopes were crushed, but they still had faith that he is alive. Marie made sure to remind them that. They stayed for another 3 months on the 20th floor, before they all took the test there and managed to advance to the 21st floor, also known as the White Cichlid floor. With this, they have all become E-rank regulars now. The 21st floor is a floor in the sky. The inhabitants there all reside in large floating towers. The group was given a small floating tower of their own, where they could stay for their duration on the floor. Should they end up no taking the test on the floor within a year, they would have to start paying for their residence or get kicked out of it. They had all gathered in a room and were discussing when they should tackle the test on the floor. They had already stayed for 3 months here, and they had to consider what to do. Anak was sitting on a sofa with the metallic orb nested on her thighs. She was slowly caressing it and enjoying its warmth when they all heard a crack coming from it. Everyone turned their attention to the metallic orb and saw cracks forming all over it. After a few moments, the whole orb fell into pieces that turned to ashes, and a bird's cry filled the room. Chapter 36, 21st Floor, 2. After Lumen lost consciousness, the next time he opened his eyes, he was in a dark and enclosed space. Having no idea where he is, he tried breaking through but realized that he is in his phoenix form, and couldn't even change back to his human form. Another odd thing is that he felt he had more than one pair of wings. Lumen panicked, not knowing what's happening to him, and tried to remember what occurred that led to this. His last memories were of him fighting Caraka, and the armored man was about to kill him. After that, everything went blank. Calming down, Lumen found out that he instinctively knew what had happened to him. He had been reborn and had gone through an awakening. An awakening that required a couple conditions to be met in order to be successful. One of them is that he needs at least 20 years of life energy stored. The more life energy he has, the faster his rebirth will be. Should he have had less than that, he wouldn't have been able to go through this process. The second condition is that he needs suitable material for his body to be reconstructed. Even if he had the necessary amount of life energy stored, he wouldn't be able to revive himself without having the substance to do so. Thankfully, his flames had refined Caraka and the armor that he wore and used that for the material for his body. That was a nice bonus, considering he felt a lot stronger than before. He also knew that it would take quite some time before he could escape his confinement. Knowing that he couldn't break through the shell surrounding him now, he focused on improving himself using the techniques Urek taught him. Lumen, reading the flow of Shinsu, knew everything that his group had gone through during the 3 years he was in his egg. His range of reading Shinsu had grown tremendously during that time, and he could easily perceive other people's emotions, even if they try to hide them. He was touched when he felt the emotions and feelings of his teammates, especially when they didn't leave him behind and carried him up the tower. He no longer needed to focus when reading the flow of Shinsu, as it had become like an instinct, and he would subconsciously do it. However, that wasn't the only thing he did. Lumen also focused on improving his body, with the Shinsu strengthening technique. His body was already stronger than before, after going through his rebirth, but being strengthened for 3 years with Shinsu made it even more powerful. Like with reading the flow of Shinsu, this was another thing he had started doing subconsciously without even trying. He would instinctively fill his body with Shinsu, strengthening it in the process. Every now and then, he would peck at the shell trying to escape it, but had no success with that. He had tried using his other abilities to break the shell, but for some reason, he wasn't able to use them at all. However, exactly 3 years after being in his confinement, something snapped within Lumen. His phoenix flames burst out and burned his shell to ashes. The whole group watched as a bird made of flames and with 4 wings appeared from the metallic orb. It let out a bird's cry and flew a circle in the room, before landing on an empty chair. The bird's main body was made up of white flames, and a pair of his wings was made up of the same white flames. However, the other pair was made up of black ominous-looking flames. Lumen felt so much more powerful than before. He felt he could crush anyone with when it comes to physical strength alone. His body was filled to the brim with power, waiting to be unleashed on someone or something. He also felt the overwhelming emotions everyone had from seeing him. The emotions were so strong that he had to stop using his technique. He didn't think that they would care about him that much, and that changed the way he looks at them. Before, if he had found someone that's stronger and more useful, he would have replaced his teammates in an instant. Now, he didn't know if he could make that choice so easily. After observing them for a bit, the flaming bird transformed into Lumen in his birthday suit. Immediately, he noticed something wasn't right. Everyone in the room looked gigantic, and even the small girls Anik, Verdi, and Vaspa looked bigger than him. He realized that they haven't grown bigger, but he was shorter than before, way shorter. Before he knew it, the chibi Lumen was squashed between 2 girls. Anik was hugging him with one arm while rubbing her face against his, while Verdi was on the other side, also rubbing her face against his. Anik didn't say a word, as tears of happiness kept pouring out of her eyes. Exhilarated that what she considered her only family member, was still alive. She couldn't even put into words how happy she felt seeing him. Anik kept sobbing and hugging him as tightly as she could, making sure that he wouldn't disappear again. Lumen's back. And he loves me so much, he turned into a cute doll. Verdi happily exclaimed, mistaking his small form for a doll. Nonetheless, she was extremely happy to see him again. Everyone else in the room had a smile on their faces, as they watched the chibi Lumen disappear between the 2 girls. Finally, you decide to show up. It took you long enough. Andrasi said with a smile on her face, happy to see him again. I knew you were okay. Good to see you back. I told you all, he was just taking a nap. I knew a random Fug Slayer couldn't possibly kill you. I told you he was going to come back. Everyone else in the group, except Tiana, chipped in as well, expressing how relieved they are to see him again. They had gone through many hardships due to Caraka, but knowing that Lumen is back, they felt that everything will be okay. They also knew that with him here, they would definitely get their revenge on the group. After that incident, Fug had boldly proclaimed that they have killed a White Star, but that didn't end up the way they expected it. The two great families that were interested in him hadn't taken any actions, but Walhaixong was a different story. Numerous of Fug's bases had been destroyed by Urek's group. They had lost thousands of members to Walhaixong, as Urek had mobilized every single member of his group. A princess of Zahard had also been a part of the murdering spree that the group went on. Not a single resident in the tower had expected Urek to react so strongly to that statement by Fug. More than once, Fug had tried negotiation with Urek, and they had even sent high-ranking members for the meetings, but each time, they were all killed. 2 of Fug's 11 slayers had been killed by them alongside an elder as well. All 3 of them were torn limb from limb and sent back to Fug in pieces. Fug had gotten so scared of Walhaixong, that they had holed up themselves, not daring to show up in public. For the moment they make a move or an appearance, the Grim Reaper known as Urek would storm the floor that they appeared on and annihilate them all. The most dangerous and secretive criminal syndicate in the tower, that troubled all the great families, was crushed into submission by one man and his group. This event had bumped up Urek to the 3rd place in the ranking of the tower, and Zahard, the king of the tower, had dropped down to 4th. Since even Zahard himself wasn't able to scare Fug to this extent. Despite his death, everyone in the tower didn't forget about White Star, or now more commonly known as Light's End due to his death. Not only were 2 of the great families interested in him while he was only an F-rank regular, but Urek Mazino, the now strongest active ranker, had gone on a killing spree due to him dying. Everyone was gossiping what kind of connection did Light's End have with Urek, for him to have such a strong reaction to his death. A day had passed since he broke out of his shell, and Lumen was currently sitting on a chair, dressed in a black suit that Verdi gave him. Since she was the only one that had clothes his current size. Verdi was in front of him, taking doll after doll from her dollhouse. "How about this one? You would make a great pair," she exclaimed. "Verdi, I'm not a doll," Lumen told her. "What about this one? Look how cute she is." Verdi took out a blonde-haired doll and presented it to him. "Verdi, I already said that I'm not a doll." As if she didn't hear him, she took out a black-haired one. "Do you like this one better? You would make a great pair." Giggling, she said. "Verdi, maybe you don't like female ones? How about this one?" Verdi asked as she pulled out a male one. "Verdi, I swear if you don't stop, I will go back to the egg." Lumen's words immediately caused a reaction in Verdi. With panic in her eyes, she latched onto him in a second. "No. I'm not letting you. I will come with you if I have to," Verdi stated while hugging him tightly. "Then stop trying to hook me up with your dolls," Lumen told her. "But I just want you to be happy," Verdi replied with tears already forming in her eyes. If he knew that she was playing around, he was going to scold her, but he could feel her sincere emotions. She truly wanted him to be happy. Lumen hugged her back. "Look, Verdi, I don't need to marry one of your dolls to be happy. I'm happy knowing that I'm alive and that I'm with you." Verdi sniffed and uttered under her breath. "Promise you won't go away again. I was very sad when you disappeared. I promise you that won't happen again." Lumen vowed not only to her but also to himself. "Now, could you give me some space, so I can try practicing with my abilities?" he gently told her. But are you sure you don't want to marry this one? I was saving the best for last." Verdi pulled out an azure-haired doll. "Verdi. I'm sorry. I won't ask you again, but I'm not letting you leave my sight. Anik gets to watch you during the night, while I get to watch you during the day." The 2 girls were taking shifts watching over him, making sure that something doesn't happen to him. "That's fine, just stay a bit further away from me. I don't want to hurt you." She nodded to his words and stepped back. Seeing her a distance away from him, Lumen focused and summoned his phoenix flames. Unlike before, where they were the warm gentle white flames, now they were an ominous black color and emitted tremendous heat. It only takes a single spark of the black flames to burn something to ashes in an instant. In a moment, the black flame in his hand turned back to the white one, but a few seconds later, it turned back to being black. The flame was fluctuating from black to white, and he had no control over it. Lumen had tried healing Hatsu's leg yesterday, but he had ended up making his injury even worse. The black flame had nearly spread to Hatsu's torso before he was able to absorb it back into himself. Now, the swordsman was out shopping for a new prosthetic since the previous was worthless. His phoenix flames were out of control, and he was trying his best to learn how to use the two types of flames separately. His flames weren't the only new thing that happened to him. Lumen also now had small control over the darkness element. He couldn't transform his body into the element like with his light form, but he could create objects made of black mass and even infuse it in his bongs. He still hadn't had the time to test out all the capabilities of the darkness element he could now use. However, that wasn't all. He had another new ability. He could create the same armor that Caraka wore. A black-like substance would appear from his skin and form the armor around him. Lumen was also trying to adjust to his chibi form, but that wasn't easy as well. Especially when he had grown a few centimeters during the night. Should he continue to grow in size like this, he would get back to his original size within a few months. He had so much on his plate, but his main priority at the moment was to learn how to control his phoenix flames. Lumen wanted to heal his team as soon as possible. Chapter 37, 21st Floor, 3. 4 months later. Lumen had grown during that time and was now as tall as Anik. He had a small growth spur at the beginning, but that had stopped and he had to find a different way to help him mature faster. Lumen was currently standing in front of Hatsu, who was laying on a bed. The rest of the group was behind him, waiting to see what will happen. The swordsman looked uncomfortable as he was squirming around in the bed. "Stop fidgeting," Lumen told him. "Easy for you to say," Hatsu replied back while wiggling in the bed. "Stop fidgeting, or I will burn you to ashes," Lumen threatened him. "You almost did that once. Who's to say you won't do it again?" Hatsu responded, remembering how Lumen nearly roasted him the last time he tried healing him. "That's it, I tried being nice." Lumen hit him on the head and knocked him out. During the past 4 months, Lumen has been practicing his control over his phoenix flames. He had some success in that regard, but knowing how his last attempt at healing his teammates was a failure, he had some volunteers that he used as test subjects. They were also nice enough to help him learn more about his black flame. It had the attribute of harvesting life from enemies. The amount that it harvests is extremely low, and he had gotten no more a day's worth from those volunteers. However, that had helped Lumen with his growth. He had a growth spurt the first month, but since then, it had slowed down. Thankfully, those volunteers were happy to provide him with their life force. Taking a deep breath, Lumen focused, and summoned his phoenix flames. Unlike before, the flames were no longer fluctuation between white and black. Now they were a constant white color, emitting a gentle warmth. He left them to burn atop his hand for a bit, making sure that nothing goes wrong. Seeing that the flames were stable, he felt assured that the operation will go smoothly. Lumen formed a bong of shinsu and infused it with the white flame. Confidently, he brought his hand on top of Hatsu's missing leg. Just as the flame touched the swordsman's body, he was instantly able to see an immediate effect. Slowly, but surely, his leg was being restored. Ah! Despite being knocked down, Hatsu had immediately woken up as soon as the white flame touched him. His leg was being regrown, but the pain he felt was like it was being slowly burned. The group, hearing him scream, momentarily thought that the operation was a failure again, but they were able to see his leg slowly being grown back. It wasn't a fast process, but it was definitely a sure one. 4 hours later, Hatsu was quietly sleeping on the bed with his leg restored. After yelling his heart out, the swordsman had fainted from the pain. Lumen let out a sigh of relief. He had to keep his concentration during the whole operation. Had he lost focus even once, the white flame could have turned into the destructive black one. "I'm all out of gas after this one, so I will heal the rest of you in the following days." Lumen looked towards Anik, Vaspa, and Tiana, who each had their own injuries. The next day he healed Anik's missing arm, and the green-skinned girl didn't even let out a sound during the 3-hour process. "Did that not hurt you?" Hatsu screamed his lungs out when I healed him. Lumen asked her. Anik just smiled brightly at him and hugged him with her now regrown arm. "That was nothing. It hurt a lot more when you were gone." Lumen hugged her back, and the green-skinned girl passed out in his arms. He carried her off to bed and tucked her in. The next on the list was Vaspa. She, like Hatsu, was fidgeting on the bed while laying on her stomach. "You don't want me to knock you out as I did with Hatsu, right?" Lumen asked her. "No." Vaspa replied back, So stop fidgeting around. Lumen told the squirming blue-haired girl. Shortly, she calmed down, and Lumen began healing her wings. Like Hatsu, the girl started screaming the moment the white flames touched her wings. Vaspa's operation continued on for 6 hours, and the girl had passed out and woken up from the pain numerous times during it. Just as Lumen had finished healing her wings, Vaspa had woken up. Feeling her wings on her back, she flapped them around to test them out. Seeing nothing wrong with them, she hugged Lumen by tackling him to the bed. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Excitedly, Vaspa thanked him and gave him a peck on his cheek before she passed out. Lumen covered her with a blanket and left her to rest. The last person on his list was Tiana. The injury was on the head, so Lumen had the least confidence in being able to heal it. He had a few volunteers that were badly injured on the head, he made sure of that, but just a single mistake could potentially end her life. He had to make sure not to lose focus even for a second. Otherwise, everything could go to waste. Tiana didn't want to lay on a bed but rather chose to lay down on his thighs. "Are you prepared? This might hurt a lot, but you have to endure it." Lumen asked the purple-haired, laying on his tights. Tiana nodded to him with confidence in her right eye. Taking a deep breath, Lumen concentrated, and gently brought his phoenix flame to her injured side. He saw her clench her teeth in pain as the flame touched her, but he couldn't stop now. Lumen watched, as slowly but surely, the left side of her face was being restored. 2 hours later, she looked as beautiful as before. She had passed out during the operation, so Lumen was about to leave the room after he covered her with a blanket. Just as he was about to step out, he heard her ask him. "Do you remember what you asked me on the 3rd floor? I'm not sure what you are talking about." Lumen had asked her a lot of things on that floor but had a feeling what she meant by picking on her emotions. "Just know that whatever you ask of me, I will gladly do it," Tiana said as she fell asleep. A month later, they were preparing to go take on the test on the 21st floor. "There's no way this works," Andrassy exclaimed while looking at Lumen. He was wearing black shorts and a black long-sleeved shirt. He had a mask on his face that covered it from below the eyes down. The mask continued down his throat, connected to a tank top. "Trust me. I've seen it happen, but it would have been even better if my hair was silver. I should consider doing that on the next floor." Lumen replied. "I don't believe you. Andrassy, though he will surely be recognized since his face was as famous as a princess of Zahard. The incident with him happened 3 years ago, but that to the residents in the tower is a short amount." The news was still fresh in their minds. A short man with rosy red cheeks, thin eyebrows and narrowed eyes approached them. He was wearing a red kimono with a red hat that had the yin-yang symbol on. "Are you the regulars for the test?" he questioned them. "Yes," Liso confirmed while the rest nodded. The short man observed them one by one and then stated. "Good. I'm Noma, a test administrator on the floor. Follow me, I will lead you to where your test will take place." He led them to a small flying ship, able to fit all 11 of them. Andrassy was looking at Lumen wide-eyed as she mouthed. "No way." To which he just winked in response. Noma controlled the ship to fly quite the distance, and they were currently floating over an ocean. The 21st floor had a few locations where the Shinsu density is extremely high, and giant pools of water like the ocean below them could be found throughout the floor. The short man came to explain their test. "Well, regulars, this is where your test will take place. More specifically, down there." Noma pointed towards the ocean. "Right under those water of Shinsu lives a giant iron mackerel shark. That one is as big as a mountain, so it's impossible for you to kill, but your test requires to kill at least one of its offsprings for each regular on your team. The shark would usually produce over 100 children every year, so the place is filled down there. They, unlike their parent, are only as big as a 5-story building." He showed them a picture of the iron mackerel shark. The creature looked like a giant white shark covered with an iron-like armor covering its body. Noma pulled out disc-like objects that had a handle coming out of them, making them look like scooters. "You can use those to go down there. The ship won't go any lower, in case the big one wakes up. It usually spends its time sleeping, but you never know. So, we have to kill at least one iron mackerel shark for each regular on the team? We don't all have to kill one as long as a team we have killed at least 11, right?" Lumen questioned him. Noma felt the question is a bit weird, since even as a team of 11 E-rank regulars, they would find it very hard to hunt 11 iron mackerel sharks. "Yes, so if one person kills 5 and another 6, all of you will pass the test. Nonetheless, he confirmed that to them. That's perfect. Noma was surprised by the confident tone of the masked regular and was even more surprised when he saw him jump off the ship without the flying disc. E-rank regulars normally don't have the ability to fly, nor can they fight in that area with an extremely high concentration of Shinsu, like the water below. Noma looked towards the rest of the regulars, but they looked calm as if the masked regular jumping down was the most obvious thing in the world. He walked up to the side of the ship and looked down, just in time to see Lumen mid-flight burst into black flames. Noma felt the temperature of the flames from where he was standing, and he a few drops of sweat on his forehead. What in the hell? Noma exclaimed, seeing those ominous black flames. The 21st floor is ruled by the Yeon family, who is known for producing powerful flame users. It is said that members of the family are flame itself from the moment they are born. He had seen a lot of strong flame users, but those ominous black flames were unprecedented. Their temperature was so high, that he was sweating despite his distance from them. Noma watched in shock, as he witnessed the black flames burning, and evaporating the water made of Shinsu. He had never seen such a sight in his entire life. As a ranker, he felt scared of the flames created by an E-rank regular. He didn't know what to think of this situation, so he immediately contacted the ruler of the floor. Miss Gina, is there a flamer user from your prestigious family that uses ominous black flames? Noma only sent her a message, not daring to contact her directly. In a moment, he received a response. No, I have no knowledge of such a flame user. Why do you ask? Just as Noma was about to respond to her, he heard an explosion come from the ocean and saw a giant black pillar made of fire. A massive part of the entire ocean had already been evaporated from the black flames. Noma couldn't see a single iron mackerel shark, even the gigantic one that even he didn't want to deal directly with. Well, Miss Gina, I think a flamer user with flames like that, had just killed absolutely all iron mackerel sharks on the floor. Noma gulped down as he sent the message to her. Seconds later, a beautiful black-haired woman, wearing a white dress that reached to her knees, appeared next to him. The woman had charming red eyes, and her hair was tied into 2 ponytails. On both ponytails, she had a hairpin with a symbol of a pink flower with a beautiful azure-colored jewel in the middle. The crest of the Yeon family. Chapter 38, 21st Floor, 4. Jenna watched as the black flames were burning the ocean made of Shinsu. Even in her family, she hadn't seen such an ominous flame. It was burning and evaporating Shinsu itself. The flames looked scary even to her, a member of the Yeon family, but she knew she had to stop them. Jenna descended from the ship like a goddess, as she slowly floated down, just in time to see a man in black shorts and a tank top that had a face mask, putting on a black long-sleeved shirt while trembling. Once he put on his shirt, she saw his bloodshot eyes as he looked at her while scratching random parts on his body. She loved animals, and not seeing a single of the iron mackerel sharks made her extremely angry. That species lived in only 2 places in the entire tower, and this was one of them. The giant iron mackerel shark was also the biggest of its species and was one of a kind. It hurt her, knowing that such an amazing creature has been killed. Gina's family had nearly massacred a species to extinction, all for the sake of monopolizing a jewel. On the 21st floor is where the last Zigana in the tower resides. A massive creature that resembles a tortoise without its shell, except for 2 blowholes in the center of its belly and back, a long stingray-like tail, 2 horns, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. A special jewel grows inside the Zigana, which comes from the center of the Zigana flower. The jewel is extremely valuable, as it grows only inside of Zigana and is considered one of the best jewels due to its beautiful color. However, this jewel is also the nutrition for Zigana's babies. To protect the value of the jewel, the Yeon family stopped all babies from growing by harvesting the flower of Zigana, and at some point in time, they had made the flower their family crest. As much as she hated this, Jenna couldn't go against her entire family, but the regular in front was a whole different story. He had killed all of the iron mackerel sharks on the floor, and that made her furious. Jenna needed to take out her anger on someone, and he was the perfect target. Regular or not, she didn't care. Jenna might end up being punished by her family for killing a regular, but she didn't mind. Lumen initially planned to harvest a few of those iron mackerel sharks for their life force. However, after he killed the first one, he gained a week's worth of life force. Knowing that just the small ones could bring him so much, he immediately set his sights on the mountain-sized one. Shooting out an endless stream of black fire, he covered the whole beast in his flames. It didn't take long for the shark to die, but the amount of life force he received was a lot more than what he expected. He had harvested over 10 years worth of life force from the giant shark, and his body immediately went through a growth spurt. In a matter of seconds, he had grown back to his original size, and due to the sudden growth, his body was itching all over. He couldn't stop scratching himself. However, that wasn't all. Lumen's body was filled to the brim with energy, and he felt like he had taken a dozen adrenaline shots. Without even being able to control himself, he had released a massive amount of his black flames that caused an explosion, and killed off all other iron mackerel sharks. Which further filled his body with even more energy, due to the life force he had harvested from them. While trembling and shaking, he had managed to put on some clothes that he had already prepared in advance. Knowing that his black flames could harvest life force, he had a few spare clothes with a bigger size just in case. As soon as he was done putting on his shirt on, he saw a beautiful black-haired woman descend in front of him. "Do you even know what you just did?" Gina questioned him with a look of sheer fury on her face. "Oh, yes, I do. I do. I know exactly what I did. I just had the best meal of my life." With the amount of life force coursing through his body, he sounded like a crackhead. Combined with his mad look and with his scratching, he looked like one as well. Gina's face distorted even more from his response, but she wanted to know who he is. "Who are you?" "Oh, Missy, you don't want to know who I am." No, you definitely don't want to know. That won't do you any favors," he replied in a maniacal manner. Gina's question was mostly to figure out if he is from the Yeon family, but judging from his speech, he was most likely from the Blitz family. A special family, that is not part of the 10 great families but is notorious for producing flame users. Most, if not all, members of the Blitz family tend to possess maniacal temperaments. They normally have red hair and red eyes, but there are always exceptions. Had he been from the Yeon family, maybe she could have talked it out with him and forgiven his actions. However, since he is most likely from the Blitz family, she wouldn't let him go scot-free from this. He would have to pay back the life he had taken. A blood-colored flame started spreading around Gina. Although it acted like fire, the flame resembled blood. Bleeding fire waterfall. Like a goddess of fire, she sent a massive torrent of her blood-like flames toward Lumen. The stream of fire was large enough to cover up a whole mountain since Gina wasn't planning on giving him any chance of survival. The fire engulfed him completely, and she kept the torrent going for about a minute. As her blood-like flames disappeared, Gina saw Lumen standing there, with black flames dancing around him. He didn't even have a single injury on him from the massive torrent of flames that she sent his way. She couldn't believe her eyes as she didn't think a regular could survive her flames, let alone without even a scratch on him. Even rankers wouldn't be able to take on her attack without receiving a single injury. This outcome just didn't make sense to her. What kind of regular is the masked man? "Missy, are you perhaps offering yourself as my next meal?" Lumen asked her with a maniacal look in his bloodshot eyes. "Although I feel full, I can always find some space for a nice dessert," he told her while licking his lips. A little bit scared from his look, Gina prepared to use one of her strongest attacks. A slit opened on her palm, and blood poured out of it. The blood transformed into the blood-like flame, as it formed a bow and an arrow. Combing her own blood with her Shinsu flames is her most destructive style. Bleeding fire arrow. She pulled the string and shot the arrow towards Lumen. One of the properties of this technique is that it will lock onto its target and chase after it until the target dies. Another property is that since the flame was made of her own blood and Shinsu, it's nigh inextinguishable. Her eyes widened in fear as she watched the black flames that were dancing around Lumen, jump towards her arrow and consume it before it could even reach him. Gina kept shooting more and more arrows at him, but the ominous black flames consumed them all. She couldn't understand how a regular's flames able to overcome the flames of a ranker from the Yeon family. Gina let even more blood out of her palms and 2 giant wings of blood like fire formed above her. 1000 bleeding fire feathers. The 2 giant wings split apart, forming thousands of feathers made of the blood-like fire. Gina sent all 1000 feathers towards him, and she watched in horror, as even the 1000 feathers weren't able to bypass the black flames dancing around Lumen. Gina was about to try and pour more of her blood out when she saw him disappear from his spot with extreme speed. Barely able to follow him, she saw a bright flash of white, as he appeared next to her with a hand grasping her neck. Gina was stunned and couldn't believe what's happening. She is a ranker of one of the 10 great families, for God's sake. How did a regular beat her so easily? She couldn't understand the situation. He was faster and had more powerful flames than a Yeon family member, which should be impossible. This all seemed like a nightmare to her. Staring at his bloodshot eyes, Gina was sure that she will die today, and there was nothing she could do about it. She had just accepted her fate when a man in a black suit appeared and grabbed Lumen's arm. The man had a slightly effeminate look with short black hair, fair skin, and blue-grey eyes, and Lumen was able to recognize the man. His name is Yuri, and he is a member of Walhaik. After Lumen had learned what Urek had done after his supposed death, he had contacted the blonde irregular. Surprisingly, Urek had just arrived on the 21st floor to do a request for Yuri, which she had asked him to do a long time ago. He had immediately rushed off to see his little bro, and he made sure to emphasize the little part when he saw Lumen in his chibi form. Urek had spent nearly half an hour just laughing at how small he is. Urek had come along with Yui, and Lumen had learned that the man is working undercover as a test administrator on the 21st floor. He didn't know much else about him since he acted like Urek's butler most of the time. However, he was very helpful when it came to finding volunteers to test out his phoenix flames. After talking for a bit and sharing a few drinks, Urek had told him, "You better call Yuri as soon as possible. She is still out there searching for Fug bases because of you. If she learns that you are alive and you haven't told her, she will definitely kill you next time you meet her." When Lumen contacted Yuri, she had started yelling at him for not reaching out to inform her that he is alive. "But I didn't have a way to contact you." Lumen had tried explaining himself, but that didn't work for Yuri. "If you didn't have a way to contact me, you should have made one." After yelling at him to her heart's content, she calmed down and expressed how happy she is that he is alive. They talked for nearly a day before she made him promise to climb higher as soon as possible, so that they could meet. "Miss Gina, attacking a regular won't do well for your image, so let's stop this here, shall we? Let's just end this now, and send the regulars to the next floor." Yui told the floor ruler while he also sent a message to Lumen on his pocket. "Gina isn't like most members of the 10 great families. There is no need for you to kill her. She is better of alive," while continuing to question her family's methods. Reading the message, Lumen had managed to calm down a bit, but still had that maniacal look in his bloodshot eyes. The life energy was coursing throughout his body, and he really needed to do something about that. "I'm sure that the regular would be happy to end this scuffle, right?" Yui asked Lumen, prompting him to remove his hold on Gina. As soon as he stopped grasping her neck, she let out a few deep breaths and stepped back away from him. Gina stared at him in fear, unable to believe that a lowly regular had completely overpowered. Seeing that she didn't even know what to say, Yui took over. "I believe you have successfully completed the test. With this, you have received the right to advance to the 22nd floor. As a reward, you will all be granted 15,000 points. I wish you luck in your climb, regulars." Yui told Lumen and winked at him, as he teleported him and his group away. Chapter 39, 22nd Floor, 1. The 22nd floor was one gigantic forest, filled with trees as tall as skyscrapers. The residents of the floor used those trees as buildings. They would hollow them out and change their insides to fit their needs, be it apartment buildings, stores, or entertainment facilities. The place was filled to the brim with regulars, like almost any other floor from the 21st and upwards. You could easily find hundreds of thousands of regulars on those floors, especially on the lower and middle ones. The test on the floor requires at least 6 members to participate, but you can have a team up to 12 regulars. The test is a team battle in an arena enclosed by massive walls, erected there, to stop regular from interfering with the test, and to outline the arena boundaries. The arena is separated into 3 areas, one for each team and a middle area, and is the size of a city like New York. Each team will have 6 cube-shaped holes, that could fit a dozen humans, on their side. In order to complete the test, you have to fill all 6 holes at the same time. And the object that you need, the cube, could be found in the middle ground, where there are a total of 11 there. Each one a large distance away from the others, so teams would carefully have to decide where they will send their members. The test has a time limit of 4 days, due to the large arena, so if neither team manages to complete the objective, both of them will fail. Despite the large number of regulars residing on the floor, only 2 teams would usually take on the test every few days or so. That would mostly depend on how long it took the previous teams to complete or fail the test. 3 months had passed, since Lumen and his group arrived on the 22nd floor. Due to the large amount of life force he had in his body, Lumen had entered deep into the forest, so that he could safely deal with it. For the first few days, he couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't fall asleep, his body was twitching, his brain felt like a CPU that was overclocked. Lumen tried training with increased gravity to tire himself out, but that didn't work. He tried overusing his light powers, but that also didn't work. Lumen also tried using his new darkness powers and was able to get a lot of practice done with them, but that didn't tire him out as well. He had even tried using the Shinsu strengthening technique that Urek taught him, by trying to use the life force inside him instead of Shinsu, but that also didn't work. When he had killed the mountain-sized iron mackerel shark, he had released a massive amount of his black flames, and that had helped out to a point, but he had ended up killing all other sharks in the R, which made the issue even worse. Lumen had thought of doing the same, but he didn't want to cause another commotion, plus there were a lot of creatures living in the forest, so doing that won't help him. He wanted to keep the fact that he is alive hidden for a bit longer. His survival from being attacked by a Fug Slayer would be a big deal, and reporters would flock to him if they learn about that. And from the 21st floor and upwards, you could easily find hundreds of reporters on each floor. Andrassy has already had numerous interviews after reaching the 21st floor and has received a lot of questions about him and his death. They have even started asking her about the new masked regular that is on her team after they reached the 22nd floor. So far, she had been avoiding those questions to the best of her abilities. Lumen was fine with them asking questions like that, as long as they didn't bother him. Otherwise, with him being in the limelight, he would have a harder time baiting the rats out. He was under the impression that Fug had already lost 3 Slayers and an Elder since he believed Caraka had died on the 10th floor. After what Urek had done to them, he didn't think that they would dare send another Slayer or Elder, considering they have lost so many already, but he was hoping to bait out a high-ranking member. As long as Fug sends someone to check out the identity of the new masked regular, he would be happy with that. After all, he had a nasty surprise prepared for them and was working on another one as well. When Lumen was at his wit's end, he tried out his white phoenix flames, and finally, he had some success. He was able to refine the life force coursing through him and strengthen his body with it, but the process was a painfully slow one. It would take him 1 day to refine a day's worth of life force, and he had at least a few years in excess of it inside of him. He didn't plan on spending years just to get rid of the surplus of life force, so he worked on ways to make the process faster. A month after they reached the 22nd floor, he had managed to combine the strengthening technique Urek taught him, with the refining done by his white flames. By doing that, he was able to increase the speed at which he refines the life force by 7 times. He could now refine a week's worth of life force in a day. And after spending 2 months doing just that, he still had a surplus of life force in him, but he no longer had the same symptoms as before. He would need about 3 to 4 months to refine all the residue life force. Lumen was currently sitting in a relaxing manner under a gigantic tree. Saber, now looking like a small cat with 2 fangs, was peacefully snoring next to him. He didn't know when, but she had learned how to resize her body, similarly to how compression licensors are able to. Normally, massive individuals can form a contract with the Guardian on the floor in order to resize the size of their bodies, since their giant size makes it inconvenient for them to move around and do activities in the tower. However, Saber was able to achieve that without forming a contract with a Guardian. That was a natural ability of hers, considering Berserker was unable to do the same. The big lizard had eaten a lot of the forest's creatures, and Lumen had returned him back to his bowl. As he was sitting under the tree, he was able to sense 2 individuals that were fighting nearby. His range of reading Shinsu was immense, and he could sense things up to 1 kilometer away from him. One of the regulars that were fighting was a muscular man that was easily over 2 m tall. The man had black hair and red eyes, and he was wearing black shorts, a black short-sleeved shirt with a green collar, and black and green sneakers. That was Novic, a branch member of the HA family, and considered one of the top 20 E-rank regulars, despite becoming one very recently. Like any other member of the HA family, he had an extremely strong physique. His opponent was a short blue-haired boy with blue eyes. The boy was wearing blue shorts and a dark blue short-sleeved hoodie. He was Kun Ran, a direct descendant of Kun Aduan, the family head of the Kun family, ranked 6th in the ranking list of the tower. Ran being the most talented member of his branch, excluding his sister, Kun Masheni Zahard, was already considered as one of the 10 strongest E-rank regulars. Both of them had incredibly strong physical bodies, but Ran was faster and more agile than Novic. The blue-haired boy was landing hit after hit on the muscular man, with each strike being enhanced with electric shinsu. Despite that, Novic was standing strong. He was a member of the HA family, so his durability was immense. While taking hits from Ran, he was trying to counter-attack with his own shinsu abilities. He would gather red-colored shinsu around his hands and punch, causing it to explode outwards in the form of a shield. Unfortunately, Ran was moving too fast for him to land a hit on him. Novic had gathered red-colored shinsu in both of his hands and was about to hit the ground with them, trying to use one of his techniques, but Ran appeared in front of him in a burst of speed before he was able to finish it. Time to end this. Ran said and formed two electric-infused bongs of shinsu in his hands and fired them off point-blank at Novic. Being hit by the two blasts of lightning, the muscular man was sent flying from the attack, right towards where Lumen was sitting. Before the flying Novic could hit him, a shield made of black mass formed in front of him and stopped the flying man. Despite hitting the shield with his head, Novic stood up shortly. "What the hell did I hit?" he said as he stood up. Looking around, he couldn't see the object that he hit, but he saw a masked man that was staring at him. "Who are you?" Novic asked Lumen with narrowed eyes. Regulars usually wouldn't come so deep into the forest, so he found the masked man suspicious for being here. Maybe he was planning to take him and ran out after they tired themselves, securing an easier time of passing the test on the floor. "You come flying towards me, but rather than apologizing, you ask me who I am? Has no one taught you manners?" Lumen replied and released a bit of killing intent. Feeling that, Novic took a few steps backward. The masked man was definitely not ordinary, but like any other member of the 10 great families, his arrogance was sky-high, and it didn't sit well with him to apologize. However, he didn't know what to do and was conflicted. Normally, he would attack and kill any other regular if they had told him that, but the masked man felt extremely dangerous. Just as he was wondering what to do, Ran walked in. "Who are you?" The blue-haired boy felt the dangerous aura coming from Lumen and immediately focused his attention on him. "Another one that hasn't been taught manners. It's common knowledge that you have to introduce yourself first before asking for someone's name." Lumen replied. "You don't know who we are?" Novic asked in wonder. The two of them are from the 10 great families and are quite famous amongst the E-rank regulars, considering they are regarded as one of the strongest, despite recently advancing to E-rank. "No, and I don't care who you are unless you are members of FUG." Lumen paused to evaluate their reaction of him mentioning FUG, and to read their emotions. Judging that they do not have a connection with FUG, he continued. "Or you want to join my team? Join your team? TSCH. If you are good enough, I could let you join my team." Ran responded arrogantly. Despite sensing the dangerous aura of Lumen, he was confident in his own abilities. He didn't think that just any E-rank regular could match his strength. Lumen lazily stood up and did a few stretches. "I haven't fought in quite some time. You seem like a good opponent for a nice warm-up." His words angered Ran. How dare an unknown regular look down on him, and think of him as nothing more than a warm-up? "I will teach you not to look down on me." As he finished his words, he appeared in front of Lumen with a burst of speed. Ran sent a punch infused with his electric shinsu, but Lumen caught his fist without taking any damage from it. Both Novic and Ran were astonished at how easily Lumen stopped the attack. "Not bad speed and strength. Your shinsu control is also good. However, you would at most be considered 6th in strength in my team." Lumen told him truthfully. He could give Vaspa and Hatsu a good fight, but the two should be able to take him down. Anik and Andrasi were out of the question, as they would easily crush him. Ran jumped backward and studied Lumen carefully. Despite his arrogance, he was an intelligent one, and he knew that he picked a fight with someone who he shouldn't underestimate. Chapter 40, 22nd Floor, 2. Knowing that Lumen is a strong opponent, Ran planned on changing the battlefield to fit him better. The blue-haired boy created a small cloud of shinsu that had electricity coursing through it. The storm cloud expanded under his control and surrounded Lumen from all sides, and Ran disappeared within the storm cloud. Hidden inside it, he was planning to sneak attack Lumen. Jumping out from the left side, he sent a lightning-infused kick towards Lumen's head. Unfortunately, Lumen was easily able to perceive his location despite him hiding in his storm cloud, and he blocked the attack by simply raising his arm. Despite his attack being blocked, Ran immediately reacted and jumped back inside his storm cloud. He tried landing a few more sneak attacks, but Lumen would block them just as easily as he blocked the first one. Ran jumped out of the storm cloud and sent another kick towards Lumen, who blocked the attack. However, this time, Ran was prepared for that. As he was kicking towards Lumen, he had already formed a bong of electric Shinsu. Forming it into a spear made of lightning, he threw it a Lumen at point blank. Mash any style, lightning spear. The lightning spear landed straight in his chest, but it didn't even budge him from his spot. As if his attack had no effect on him at all. That tickled. Lumen casually remarked, not hurt even the slightest from the attack. Novic was staring at Lumen wide-eyed. Even he couldn't take on that attack without protecting himself with his techniques. However, the masked Regulid took the attack head-on and didn't even move from his spot. Who is this guy? How have I never heard of him? Novic asked himself. He knew all of the strongest E-rank regulars, but the masked man wasn't one of them. Ran attempted several more sneak attacks on Lumen, but that was obviously not working for him. Knowing that he couldn't beat the masked regular in his current state, he decided to step it up a notch. He didn't like using that technique, but he had no other option. Ran created a highly concentrated bong of Shinsu infused with electricity that took the shape of a pill. He threw the bong in his mouth and gulped it down. Lightning visibly started coursing through his body, and a black cross-shaped mark appeared on his right cheek. Redan, or also known as lightning pill, is a technique that increases the user's strength and speed by several folds, a technique that is only usable by a few selected members of the Kun family. The technique also increases the strength of the user's lightning-based attacks, as well. Although Redan gives a tremendous boost in fighting strength, it can only be used for a limited amount of time. Ran can use it for no more than 5 minutes and will be left incapable of moving after its effect expires. With the boost from Redan, Ran was more confident in being able to match the masked regular. Very few could keep up with him in his current state. Lumen watched in interest as he felt Ran increase his strength after consuming the highly concentrated bong of Shinsu. This was his first time seeing Shinsu be used in such a way, and he was half expecting Ran to shout Godspeed, with the electricity coursing through his body. With his increased speed, Ran appeared in front of Lumen in an instant. With a confident smirk on his face, he sent a massive blast of lightning at Lumen. The blast covered him completely and drilled a hole in the giant tree behind him. That's a pretty good attack, little one. Lumen commented after the blast dissipated. He was still standing in the same spot since their fight began without a single scratch on him. This can't be real. Novic was thinking that this is just a dream. There is no way a regular could take on that attack without defending himself. 2. Ran moved lightning fast as he appeared on Lumen's right side while throwing a punch, which was easily blocked. Not. This time he launched a kick from his left side but was yet again blocked. Call. Ran appeared on his right side again but shot another massive blast of electricity covering Lumen entirely. Me. Appearing behind Lumen, he threw spear of lightning at him. Short. Espada Grande. Ran appeared above Lumen with a gigantic lightning sword made of several bongs of Shinsu. The attack that was larger than a 5-story building landed on Lumen and caused a massive explosion. After the dust from the explosion scattered, Novic and Ran saw Lumen still standing in the same spot that he stood during the entire fight, without a single scratch on him. He was nonchalantly staring at Ran with an amused smile on his face. Lumen's physical durability and Shinsu resistance were immense. His body was strengthened from his revival, and regulars would have a very hard time at even being able to injure him. To top it off, he trained with the technique Urek taught him and had combined it with his white flames to refine life force as well. In terms of body resistance, even Ha family members would be jealous of him. Novic was starting to think that the masked man is, in fact, a ranker and not a regular. He just couldn't believe that a regular would be able to survive all of those attacks without a scratch. Novic himself would be left in a critical condition from them, and could possibly even die. Let alone just any random E-rank regular, they would get killed before they could even understand what's happening. Ran was starting at Lumen in disbelief. He couldn't understand how he wasn't even able to make the masked man even move from his spot. He was the most talented member of his branch, and yet, he couldn't even put a scratch on Lumen. The only time he had suffered such a miserable defeat was when he fought his sister once. However, she is a princess of Zahard and a ranker, while the masked man should be a regular. The last technique he used took a huge toll on his body, so he was left panting after using it. Ran couldn't even react as a giant hand of darkness formed next to him and caught him. He tried resisting, but he was unable to break free from the hold of the hand made of darkness. Not bad, little one. You could give Vaspa a run for her money with that speed. Maybe you could even beat Hatsu, but it seems you can't keep that state for long. Lumen told him as he brought Ran closer with his hand made of darkness. Vaspa? Hatsu? Aren't those two members of Andrasi's team? Novic questioned to the side. Helping out Ran didn't even pass through his mind. Novic personally witnessed how easily the masked man took him down without even moving, and he knew that he didn't stand a chance against him. Here's where you are wrong. It's not Andrasi's team, it's my team. Lumen corrected him. Novic was astonished that someone unknown was the leader of that monstrous team, but then he remembered the story about White Star, or now known as Light's End. Supposedly, he was someone extremely strong that used to lead the team before. However, that guy should be dead, and he was known for using light-based attacks. Could he have possibly survived? Though that didn't explain his darkness element. So, little one. Are you interested in joining my team? Lumen questioned Ran. He was impressed by his strength and knowing he isn't a FUG member, he wanted to recruit him. Without even hesitating, the blue-haired boy immediately responded. No. Lumen was surprised at how quickly he was denied. Ran hadn't even thought about it for a second, before refusing to join his team. And why is that? He asked him in wonder. Because I already promised I will join A.A's team when he catches up to me. If you want to join his team, I can introduce him to you. Despite being caught by Lumen, Ran kept his proud nature. He had already made a promise to Agnes, so there was no way he will go back on his words. You are an arrogant little fellow, aren't you? Lumen laughed out, and as much as Ran wanted to yell at Lumen for calling him little, he already knew that the masked man is on a completely different level from him. I will pass on your offer, but should you change your mind and my team is still on this floor, you could come to seek me out. Lumen was impressed by Ran's performance. Had his team not trained with the increased gravity, Ran would have been stronger than almost all of them. And should he end up eating the Redan, he could have possibly even beat Andrasi and Anak, if they hadn't trained with Lumen that is. Novic was sitting to the side, hoping that the same offer would be given to him, but he was bound to be disappointed. Lumen was only interested in Ran and not him. I've been in this forest for a few months now. So, mind telling me what's happened recently? Lumen asked Ran as he continued holding him in his hand of darkness while making his way towards the city on the floor. No idea, I don't follow the news. Ran casually replied while being carried in the hand of darkness. He didn't like it, but he couldn't even move a muscle, so he had no other choice. Hey, wait for me! Novic called out and chased after them. After dumping Ran to Novic, Lumen entered one of the apartment trees. He walked up to a room and knocked on it. Moments later, Liso opened the door. Hey, you are back. Come in. We were just planning to come and see you, but it seems that's pointless now. Liso said as he ushered him to enter the room. As soon as he entered, Anak had already jumped him for a hug, happy to see him. She isn't much of a talker and prefers expressing herself with actions. Lumen, look, look. I have a bunch of new dolls. Verdi excitedly shook her dollhouse in front of him. He ruffled her hair, and she giggled in response. Lumen loves me best. After having a short greeting with everyone else in the room, he asked. So, when can we take on the test? We can do it in 2 weeks, Liso answered him. We would usually sign up for the test in case you come back, but forfeit it each time since you weren't here. With you being here now, we have no need to forfeit again. Good job. Lumen praised him, making Liso scratch his head in embarrassment. Liso entered the kitchen and shortly came out with few bottles of booze. Since you are back, let's celebrate. 2 weeks later, they were ready to take on the test. Gina, a man with orange hair, slit-eyed, and cat ears, explained the rules of the test, and teleported the group to the test area. Since they knew the locations of all the cubes, they had a simple plan prepared for the test. Their 6 fastest members would simply go after a cube and bring it back to the cube-shaped hole. Lumen, Andrasi, Anak, Vaspa, Hatsu, and Tiana each sped off towards a location where a cube is located. The regulars from the other team didn't even have a chance, as the 6 easily reached a cube and brought it back. Despite the large area, it didn't take them more than half an hour to accomplish that. The hardest part of the test for Lumen's team was the part where they had to simultaneously place the cube in the cube-shaped hole. As they placed the cubes, they were all teleported out of the arena, successfully passing the test. That was fast. Jin commented as he looked at the regulars that just completed the test in half an hour. which makes it the fastest recorded time anyone has passed this test. Well, congratulations, regulars. You've passed the test on the 22nd floor and are granted the right to climb higher. As a reward, you will all receive 20,000 points. Good luck, regulars. Jin congratulated them and teleported them to the next floor.
Thanks for listening.